Hello. On Have Your Say 247 today, we have a special guest. He's an economist, Kelvin Emmanuel. He will help us get a picture of the economic outlook of Nigeria in 2025 and what President Bola Tinubu must do to salvage the nation. For those who may not know him, take a look at Kelvin speaking to Arise TV just last week.
I don't know what the Southeast Governors Forum are doing. I don't know what they discuss when they meet, but there are critical areas that we must address and we must bring to the table as soon as possible. The Southeast, yes, is the only region that does not have a high pressure gas transmission pipe to take natural gas through it. You have the AKK, the Ajaokuta, Abuja, Kaduna, Kano. There is a second phase of that AKK that goes to Gausu in Zamfara. Now, in that AKK, you have pressure metering and reduction stations in Gwagwalada for Abuja. You have in Kaduna, you have in Kano, and then you're also going to have in Gausu when the second phase starts. That AKK is what the government hopes to extend for transnational gas pipeline through Niger Republic to Algeria, even if I don't think that will be feasible because of the lack of diplomatic relationship between Niger Republic and the Nigerian government in Abuja. Okay? The Southeast does not have a pipe that runs through it, despite the fact that Abia State produces a lot of natural gas. In 2007, Ibe Kachuku designed Nigerian Gas Master Plan, and in that master plan, he put a 121-kilometer pipe that is supposed to extend from Aba to Owerri, to Enugu, to Onitsha, and then to Nnewi. The government says that no, they want to do a TNGP pipe extension from Abia State to Ajaokuta, and the second phase is going to go from Abia State to Enugu to Ajaokuta. That is going to take gas away from the Southeast, not through the Southeast. You need a pipe that extends that because you need gas for glass fabrication, you need gas for urea, you need gas for power. 40% of the gas that is typically produced every day, either through associated gas that you get when you drill crude oil, yeah, or through non-associated gas fields. It's used for electricity. So how do you want to increase generation and increase feedstock to the gencos in the Southeast if you don't build a high-pressure transmission pipe? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that this happens? It's the Nigerian Gas Infrastructure Company.
All right, that is our guest for today. So please join us as we'll bring you a special edition of Have Your Say 247. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rudolph Okonkwo. It's a beautiful day here in New York City. Let's welcome to the show our guest. Oh, where is our guest? All right. Our guest is was here. He was here in the studio a few minutes ago. I think something probably happened. We will get him back. But we are going to have an interesting edition of the show today. After my interview with Kevin, we will have our typical Have Your Say 247, where we are going to discuss topics like Tinubu's visit to Enugu State, which is happening today as we speak. A lot of people are thinking that it's because of what Peter Obi said in his New Year's speech to Nigerians. We're also going to talk about the situation in Rivers State, where the governor, Fubara, signed 1.18 trillion budget that was approved in 3 days, 72 hours, after he submitted it to 3 lawmakers. So, I don't know, Nigeria, the country. We're going to talk about that. What does that mean? Is that democracy who is best served if only three lawmakers approving a budget of 1.18 trillion. In NNPC news, we have the NNPC claiming that Port Harcourt Refinery and the one in Warri that they are doing very well. And they extended an invitation to Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president, to visit and verify. And Obasanjo's people reacted by issuing a statement telling the NNPC that if you want to invite a former president, there is a proper way you do that. This is not how you do that. So the bigger question is whether the NNPC, their claims, whether it's working, whether the refineries are out there producing petrol. But the NNPC told Nigerians this week that they are looking at the possibility of petrol coming down to I think they said 500 naira a liter. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will get our guests in. Thank you and Happy New Year.
I'll tell you what, Lagos is a city of about 18 to 20 million people. We don't really know our accurate census in Nigeria because, we've not had a real census in a very long time. But let's just say Lagos is a city of about 18 to 20 million, occupying 30,527 square meters, I think, which is the smallest landmass in Nigeria. It has a GDP of over $4,500 per capita when you look at it in real times, compared to the per capita of Nigeria of about $2,520 US. The question now becomes, of the 6 different ports in Nigeria, Warri, Onne, Calabar. Calabar, by the way, was the first deep sea port in Nigeria because Calabar was the first federal capital of Nigeria. Apapa, Tinkan, how many of them are operational? How many of them are operational today? Look, Onne Seaport is designated as exploration and production for oil and gas, which means that if you're bringing any goods that is non-oil and gas cargoes, the rates that your charge is not, it makes the port uncompetitive. So if you bring a car through on there, you're going to pay more as compared to what you pay in Lagos, which means that Lagos will be the preferred seaport for bringing in cars and every other cargo. And cars, by the way, are one of the major imports Nigeria that constitutes a share of our major imports, especially from the US. Okay? Why would you not invest in raising the channel draft in Calabar? In 2006, a contract was awarded to a Dutch company to embark on rehabilitation of that seaport and to raise the channel draft. The government had issues with the company over contract variation costs, and that lingered for a long time. When the government attempted to go back to do it, the company says that you cannot, and the case was in court. In 2022, that case was taken out of court for out-of-court settlement. The immediate past MD of NPA says that, they've taken the case out of court. We're going to work on raising the channel draft. The Calabar Seaport is dead. Like, you barely have vessels coming there, maybe one vessel per week compared to Lagos. How do you build an economy when the smallest state by landmass that has the highest per capita income with the highest population, right, has the only functioning seaport in Nigeria, while everybody else is left to go home and dry? It doesn't make sense. This is the reason why I'm saying to the president that it is economic injustice, and Nigeria is structurally, skewed to favor Lagos economy. And this is the basic truth. The Calabar deep seaport draft has not been done. The documents at the ICRC has been cleared for Akwa Ibom deep seaport project in Ibom. The federal government has sat on it because if you look at the structure, 20% of the shares belongs to the federal government, 20% belongs to the state government, and 60% belongs to interested private sector investor. And that 60% was given as a 34-year concession, a PPP with Bolloré Logistics, like 2 or 3 years ago. Bolloré, the French company, ended up selling itself to MSC, Mediterranean Shipping Company. Mediterranean said they are doing revalidation. Why is the federal government not putting as much effort in making sure that they start building Akwa Ibom Deep Seaport like they did for Lekki Deep Seaport in Lekki Free Trade Zone? And now the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy is saying that they are going to, cut to investors, and they are doing drawings to see that they start the Bakassi Deep Seaport. How can Lagos have 3 functioning seaports with a 4th one in the works and every other place is languishing? How do you build an economy when everything is centered around Lagos? Is it because the Lagos establishment is afraid that if there's an operational seaport in the Eastern Maritime flank, which geographically is better for maritime operations, you're going to have diversion of port operations from the southeast, the south-south, the northeast to Akwa Ibom? Is it because they're afraid of revenue losses? It doesn't make any sense. We have to say the truth to power.
All right, that's our guest, and we are having a small technical problem. He will join us in contact with him. He was in here a few minutes ago, but Nigeria's internet situation. We will do that. But some of the stories we're watching, like I told you, the president is visiting Enugu State. We are going to talk about that. There's another interesting conversation about the Nigerian economy that I wanted you guys to watch and bear that in mind.
My conscience can never make me agree with hunger, poverty, and deprivation. It's important for us to look at economic history before we make economic judgments. It's important for us to note in 1945, Germany was faced with similar decision immediately after the First World War. Germany was advised to float a currency as well as remove subsidy, which was done. But do you know that poverty and hunger, including economic deprivation, took Germany to a point where they did away with their old currency and started a new currency called Deutschmark? And economic history is there for those who are listening to us now and watching us across the globe, including the internet. Just Google what I'm telling you. 2, another country that was also faced with so much hardship and as well as subsidy removal and currency devaluation was Japan. Japan has suffered a lot of loss in the World War. Why? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This country had to follow Germany immediately because of the economic concern. I give you the 3rd one, which is even more recent. It was Russia. Russia in 1980, early 80s, had a leader just before Vladimir Putin. The leader felt what was important was the advice coming from this same institution, which includes World Bank and IMF. First, remove subsidy. Second, float the currency. 3rd, increase taxes in the name of tax reform. What Nigeria is looking at now, what happened? The country suffered and they fell without pain. You cannot have economic prosperity. Says who? Which pain is America going through? Which pain are other countries going through? People can die in pain.
That's the nature of the economic outlook of Nigeria from different people. So we are still hoping and working on our guests joining us. But in the meantime, let me have a chat with one of our usual people in the studio here. That is Mr. James. Mr. James, welcome to the show. You're muted, James.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes. I know before now you contacted me and you wanted to say something about Jimmy Carter who died I think early this week, I believe.
Yeah, correct.
Yes. So what is your reflection on him while we wait for our guests to rejoin us?
Actually, it's a pity the man died. Although we shall all die, but it's a pity the man died for one reason. He was the president of the United States, 39th president or so, 38 or 39.
Yeah, 39th, yeah.
Now, I took special interest in him because during the liberation struggle in Zimbabwe, which was called Southern Rhodesia, Britain was dilly-dallying over land redistribution program. You know, the whites, that's the British whites in particular, they dispossessed the people of Zimbabwe of their land without compensation in 18-something. They fought a war which they lost. Then in 1962 or 63, they relaunched that war, they lost again. And that war was protracted till 1979 or thereabout, before the independence came. Now, during the negotiation at Lancaster House in 1979, Britain talked about compensating the white landowners. But the Zimbabweans, particularly Robert Mugabe and others, insisted that the land belongs to them. They were forcibly dispossessed of their land, and they cannot pay to repossess the land they were forcibly, that they lost to the whites. During that period, the British government was playing pranks with the intention of dragging the matter much further. It was then Jimmy Carter stepped in. And Jimmy Carter had to cough out money, US money. Jimmy Carter had to cough out money to fund the land redistribution program. And that ushered in independence in the year 1980. Unfortunately, nobody is saying anything about Jimmy Carter's role in Zimbabwe. When I was a little boy, there were a lot of conferences, Anglo-American peace proposals for Zimbabwe, United Nations effort, even Jamaica, and other. Everyone was worried about Zimbabwean problem. But that singular move the man took clipped the wings of Margaret Thatcher, and independence came in 1980. We agree the whites have been very unfair in their dealings with Africans, but should they do anything praiseworthy, we should not sweep it under the carpet.
Now, I'm surprised about this because how will you say that helped with the issue of land? It wasn't resolved in Zimbabwe. It came back again and led to the situation today.
Yes, it was in phases. It was in phases. The first phase, the money came, and some of the whites, I think they call it willing buyer, willing seller, or willing seller, willing buyer. The first phase was successful. And when the blacks repossessed their land, there was bumper harvest at the end of the first 2 years or so. Now, when the second phase came up, Britain refused to honor her commitments. That was the cause of that complicated the issues. And I can't remember the exact year, Robert Mugabe had reason to alter, I think, the constitution of the country as far as land ownership was concerned. That was when Britain went wild. But Britain would never admit to any country, anybody, that they refused to honor their side of the agreement.
Looking at what happened in Zimbabwe, do you think a similar thing will happen eventually in South Africa over land?
That's a very difficult question to answer because of the way the South Africans are managing their affairs. Although they know where they are coming from, they know their limitations, but people like Malema and others, they've started talking about land issues. Because while I was in South Africa, the whites own unimaginable tracts of land, while the blacks are completely landless. That's the situation in South Africa right now. If it is not carefully handled, it's going to be very, very explosive. When this generation of South Africans have passed away, that's Thabo Mbeki and others. When they've passed away, the incoming generation, which the South Africans call the born frees. A born free is somebody who did not witness apartheid. Those who were born after 1994. When they assume power, it's going to be something very terrible because the white population in South Africa is on the decline. As we are speaking right now, in about 50 years from now, they will not be a formidable force to be reckoned with, no matter the economic or political power. So now is the time for them to address the issue of land in South Africa.
All right, for those who are joining us, we are still waiting to reconnect with our guest, Kelvin Emmanuel, who was here in the studio before we went live and something just happened. So we will reconnect with him and we will bring you the conversation that we promised you on the economy of Nigeria, the outlook for 2025. In the meantime, I'm having a chat with Mr. James, who most of you know is joining us from the Gambia. He's an expert. He refused to agree that he's a historian, but he rolls out historical facts every day on platforms across the social media space. Okay, now James, let's talk more about Jimmy Carter. He won the Nobel Prize. Why?
I think it's because of his, should I say, he was an easygoing gentleman, let me put it that way. If it is a peace prize, anybody pursuing peace at the expense of war should deserve some commendation. You remember when the Ayatollah of Iran returned from exile in 1979, the American embassy was stormed and they desecrated the reputation of America, let me put it that way. He was in power. He did not flex his muscles. If it were to be somebody like Netanyahu, that would have resulted in something else. And at that time, 1979, the Iranians were not as militarily strong as they are today, because it was the days of Shah Pahlavi. Shah Pahlavi even was buying weapons from the United States. So if they had attacked Iran, they knew the military capability of Iran and how to go about the operation. But Jimmy Carter did not toe that line. He decided to swallow his pride in the interest of peace. So in my opinion, he even deserves something greater than the Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay. All right. And I know that the funeral has started this today in Atlanta, I think in Georgia, and then from there they will bring the body. Yeah, they'll bring the body to Washington, D.C. And people have compared him to Obama. He actually won his Nobel Prize long after he was president. People have talked about him, compared him with Obama. They actually thought that Obama would serve only one term, just like Jimmy Carter. Do you think the fact that he is from the South, that it played a role in how he approached the presidency?
No, I will not be able to answer that question because I don't know much of American history
Political
and the way
history.
they organize themselves. But one thing is, that's just it.
But do you think that he was good to Africa, apart from the case that you mentioned now?
Yeah, you see, the problem with the U.S. foreign policy is this. No matter who is in the White House, the U.S. policy on Africa remains the same. Be it Obama, George Bush, I mean, whosoever it is. That is the main problem they are grappling with. The policies are there. Your trade policy, what's it called, foreign affairs, everything in U.S. governance, they are in policies. So you just come and implement the policies and you go away. So his hands were tied, let me put it that way. That's why even Obama could not do much for Africa. I remember when Obama was, okay.
James, let's hold that thought. Our guest is back in the studio, and we will we'll continue from here when we finish with our conversation with Kelvin Emmanuel. So, but James, thank you so much for sharing your views. Welcome to the show, Kelvin Emmanuel. Hi.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much.
I thought you disappeared on us. My people said I started getting messages, so you fooled us that you have Kelvin coming on the show. Nigerians, they're very pessimistic. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, where do we start? I saw this story. The president, let me start from here. He's been traveling. He's been talking to the nation, and all the speeches he's been making to the country. He always, in every speech, he will say that better days are ahead. That we should all be calm. We should all bear the pains of today. That tomorrow will be better. there's how did they say that, the light at the end of the tunnel. People have been looking for that light. Have you seen the light?
That's a very important question, as a matter of fact, and I'll tell you that the problem usually in telling people that they need to tighten their seatbelts is if you're the one on the steering, you also have to tighten your seatbelt. You can't have people flying in Rolls Royce and buying new houses, and then you tell them that they should tighten their seatbelt. So there is a moral hazard. There is a ruthlessness and carelessness of the Nigerian political class that makes it difficult for you to sell that message. Okay? If you're telling them that the cost of living crisis and the reforms that you're going through is so that the economy can be better, you have to show them first that you're tightening your belt. So it's because of the lack of sensitivity, the lack of emotional intelligence from the political class. That's why it's difficult for you to sell the reforms in Nigeria. Because the reality and the truth of the matter is that in 2023, the economy was broke. It was broke. The CBN was technically insolvent. The CBN had negative net external reserves. The net external reserves was negative. So net external reserves is basically your gross reserves minus all the encumbrances you have. It was negative, which means that the CBN was unable to do balance of payment. It had $7 billion in FX forwards it was owing. It has FX swaps of more than $12 billion, to banks. And because it was unable to do balance of payment on capital and dividend remittances from it was difficult for you to control the spiral of the exchange rate. That was why you saw that from October 2023, the exchange rate started spiraling and the black market premium started widening. You notice that between July and end of September, the exchange rate stayed within a band, the official and parallel market rate stayed within a band of between 770 and 820. And then it started spiraling because the central bank didn't have the dollars. NNPC was not remitting money to the central bank. 10 years ago, it was giving central bank $3 billion US monthly from about $800 million of fiscalized annual production. You have your JV and PSC bonus, JV share, and all of that. In 2023, despite the fact that it produced 537 million barrels of crude oil, it was remitting less than $300 million US to the government. And the government needed like $30 billion every month to settle balance of payment obligations. So as the exchange rate spiraled, inflation followed. As inflation followed, now when you have a situation whereby your parallel market rates is at such a deviance, or there's a huge deviation between your official and parallel market rate, you do either of two things. You peg the official rate and you keep supplying the market, and you bear the loss. Because when you operate a fixed band, a fixed peg for your exchange rates, whatever difference you have between the official and parallel market rate, the government has to bear that loss. It was doing that about $320 million on a monthly basis. The government didn't have the money to bear that loss. So it basically allowed the rates to flow freely. That was how you saw the Naira drop below 1,000 and it continued dropping. And as it spiraled that way, the cost of living spiraled with it because the economy has very weak shock absorbers. It's so exposed. The Nigerian economy is extremely sensitive to FX rates because you import petroleum product imports until Dangote came was about $28 to $30 billion on a yearly basis. Petroleum imports. And that was what also happened with petroleum products. Basically, as the exchange rate spiraled, the landing cost of PMS jumped, the landing cost of diesel jumped. I remember I was doing a project in 2021 and I had to buy diesel on a daily basis, about 200 liters of diesel daily. We're buying diesel at 280 naira per liter. And diesel went from 280 naira per liter it went to 1,250, 1,300. So you can imagine every business in Nigeria screaming and automatically revising their price. Landing cost of PMS jumped. Yeah, even if I will give you more details on the, so many gray areas and the policy inconsistencies and the barefaced lies that are not explainable in that midstream and downstream sector as we go on today. Okay, so everybody revised their price. Everybody revised their price. Everybody. The cost of energy is very critical because the cost of energy and food constitutes, I'll say, food is 52% to the CPI basket, energy is 17%. The cost of living, that was what happened to the cost of living crisis in Nigeria. Everything spiraled. So that's how you came to this point where everybody is crying, But then, if you say you're going through reforms, you have to show them that you're actually going through reform, not by what you say, by what you do. You can't be buying jets and importing expensive cars and brand new cars and having 25, 30 car convoy and telling the people that they should tighten their belt. It doesn't work that way. And there's just something about Africa where we celebrate consumption. Okay? Somebody manufactures a car in Germany or somebody manufactures a car in China. Now, the new one is Nigerians are beginning to really be attracted to Chinese cars, Chinese automobiles. Yeah. Africa is a continent where you come and dump everything. Yeah, because we don't have standards and we don't understand that real success, is in production, not in consumption. We celebrate consumption. Our cultural legacy in Africa is people want to pride themselves in owning the most expensive things, not in creating stuff that people buy, other people buy. And because you don't have an economy that is production based, you have a container economy. You import petroleum products, you import food. Nigeria does not even produce enough maize to feed itself, for animal feeds, for maize flour. It imports palm oil. Nigeria today imports about 200,000 metric tons of palm oil from Malaysia and a few other countries. Nigeria imports palm oil. Okay, so because the economy is consumption based and not production based, you see how the exchange rates, the drop of the naira, and the lack of structural shocks to absorb that drop immediately impacted on the price of everything in the market. And that's where we are. And you can see that custom also adopted the floating exchange rate system, where it said that it's now going to put your FX rate for clearing at the rate at which you open your Form M. And because the rate keeps moving up and down, people can plan. The governors are celebrating higher revenues, but those higher revenues are basically called the FX differential. It's not because of anything dramatic or magical that has happened. It's just FX differential. So the governors have more money to spend, but how are they actually spending the money? CBN governor came out and said that the governors, they've noticed that usually there is a movement of the rates. Naira weakens every time FAC is released on a monthly basis. It's a very weighty statement for the CBN governor to make, and he's seen evidence. So it just goes to show you how the governors are spending their newfound increase in FAC allocation on a monthly basis.
Kelvin, before you go further, there's something you said I want you to clarify. So you said that there was $38 billion that we're spending importing petroleum products. Now that we are not going to spend that, hopefully, importing, does it mean that we are going to have that money in the country?
So here's the problem. The problem is this. Dangote, when it started, was importing crude oil feedstock from the US, of course, heavy crude, Western Texas Intermediate, mostly, API degree less than 30 degrees. And then, there was this whole back and forth between Dangote and the government. The government decided that, okay, NNPC has to shift some of its allocation. The operators have to shift some of their allocation to fulfill sections 109 the Petroleum Industry Act, that says that naturally the domestic refineries in Nigeria with nameplate capacity of 864,500 barrels installed capacity on a daily basis, they have to first be satisfied before they give you export permit to leave products out of Nigeria. Okay? So until September, he was buying crude oil in dollars. He's still buying crude oil in dollars, by the way, because the government says that there's been a naira-based crude oil sales. The crude oil promised under that plan, which is supposed to be anywhere between 10 and 12 million barrels on a monthly basis, is not what is delivered. A share of that is actually sold in US dollars. In fact, last year, in Q4 of last year, Dangote had to open a trade finance facility of $2 billion. That is like a revolving finance facility that helps you to basically bridge what they call your invoice discounting window, the window within which you buy crude, you refine, you sell, you have your invoice paid. Yeah, so that window of about anywhere between 45 and 60 days, you need bridge financing to be able to accommodate it so that you can replenish your crude stock, because no one is going to give you crude oil on credit. The best you can get from some of the international oil traders is they bring crude oil, you sign some kind of swap, and when you refine, you give them some of your non-transportation fuels and maybe some of the products you refine in exchange, equivalent value, with an interest rate on it. Okay? But that is not smart business, because you won't get full value as a refiner if you do that from your crack spread. You won't be able to achieve your positive cracking margin, which is what refiners call it, if you do that. So if up until Q4 of last year, he's had to open a trade finance facility with a foreign bank and raise $2 billion to be able to bridge that invoice discounting window for crude oil feedstock, and then he even ordered 2 million barrels of crude oil from the US, Q4 of last year. It tells you a lot about the state of that so-called Naira-based crude oil swap. Because look, as we speak today, NNPC has commitments of about $14 billion in loans.
For where? To who did they borrow the money for? What is it? What did they do with the money? I hear that NNPC is borrowing money.
In fact, the latest one is what they call Project Leopard. $2 billion that has been structured. There is an Abu Dhabi-based oil company. I think UAE-based oil company. I won't mention their names. It's a major company in the UAE, and then there is a Nigerian operator, national oil company. I won't mention the name also. That are the financiers or creditors in that deal. Both of them are financing the first tranche of $1 billion. Then there's a second tranche of $1 billion. I don't know who the financiers are for. But most of these loans has basically been between international oil traders, them, Glencore, Vitol, Trafigura, and then banks, and then multilateral development banks, finance houses. It's called crude oil swap. It's reserve-based lending, PXF. In banking, if you speak to bankers, they'll tell you it's termed as PXF. That's the code name for these loans. It's reserve-based lending where, and this is a very important subject. It's a very important subject because I remember when they were campaigning in 2022, I'd mentioned to someone who is now an essay to the president, I said, this idea of financialization where you forward sale your oil and gas, it doesn't favor you because there's nowhere in the world where reserve-based lending, where you stake your natural resources in exchange for.
All right. Kelvin's internet is.
You sell your birthright for porridge and you get the short end of the stick. That's exactly what Nigeria is doing. So you have all kinds of loans.
These loans, are they who approve who will approve it, or is it NNPC that can do that independent of the government?
NNPC behaves like a government unto itself, and this is why I've always wondered, they behave like a government unto themselves, because the first one was, a loan that is structured to finance the FG's share in Train 7. Train 7, of course, is the new 8 million ton per annum LNG plant that will add to the existing 22 million ton per annum plants that OBJ built up until 2006. Since then, this is the first time this thing is going to be added. But despite that, they financed the forwards, so they financed their share in that project, by forward selling Nigeria's crude oil and collecting cash up front to give as equity, because the FGN owns 49% of NLNG. And it's like an incorporated joint venture where if there's any capital project, you have to bring your share. You cannot tell your partners to carry you and you pay later, because it's incorporated joint venture. And this is the model I've always argued for upstream, for oil, that has fell on deaf ears as contained in Section 65 of the PIA. Okay? So you have all kinds of loans. They finance the so-called turnaround maintenance for the Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries were financed through forward sales. They didn't have the money for it. They only got contract award letter from the presidency. Took that contract award letter, went to a multilateral development bank, told them the government is good for it, that they should give them loan. Afrexim gave them $1 billion in 2020 to finance turnaround maintenance, and then they pledged Nigeria's forward future production in exchange for that loan. So as you're producing your cargoes on a daily basis and your operators are giving you your share of profit oil, yeah, because you have your profit oil, you have your tax oil, you have your royalty oil. As they're giving you your share of profit oil, you're basically taking those cargoes and you're giving to the traders who are collectors on behalf of the financiers to sell and give back to them with interest. That's what they've been doing. So you can imagine how they are running the country. And because you're giving them the crude oil back as repayment, you basically don't have the dollars you need to remit back to the central bank, through the external asset manager. JP Morgan is Nigeria's #1 external asset manager, because all the crude oil proceeds are actually paid to JP Morgan before it's remitted to the Central Bank of Nigeria, because they're in US dollars. Yeah? You don't have the US dollars you need, that the CBN needs to be able to do balance of payments and then stabilize the FX rate. And because you're not able to stabilize the FX rates, everything is reacting to that. People have forward contracts for up until second quarter of this year that shows they're expecting the bought forwards for FX up to 2,000 naira to a dollar, 2,100 naira to a dollar. Just to show you how fearful they are about the state of Nigeria's net asset ratio with the external asset managers. So the dollars you should give to external asset managers like UBS, like Standard Chartered, like JP Morgan, like Deutsche Bank, like BNP Paribas, you're instead giving to collectors to sell and then remit to the creditors who borrowed you money to finance all these projects that you're financing.
Now, do we know how much we've spent on this turnaround maintenance we hear all the time? Right from Jonathan.
The records show that Nigeria has expended over 11 trillion naira on turnaround maintenance, and yet it can't produce PMS. And that between 2019 and today, they've budgeted another, maybe I put it at $2.4 billion. Yeah? $2.4 billion can build a brand new refinery, 60,000 barrel capacity, brand new, in a separate location. So this is my point to them exactly. What is the point? Build a brand new refinery, for God's sake. Leave those refineries. Build a brand new refinery. Take that money. Build a brand new refinery. Why? Why are you not building it? Why? Because if you build a brand new refinery, there will be no way to inflate the EPC cost, engineering, procurement, and construction costs, because you have to deliver. You have to deliver. If you build a brand new refinery, they say this is the EPC cost, this is the benchmark globally for procurement for to build a commercial size refinery of this capacity. Here's the money. Go and deliver the project. There will be no way for you to eat to do mago inside. There will be no way for you to do it. But if you go and you do turnaround maintenance for dead refineries that are moribund, you can always inflate EPC cost. And this is what we've always had.
So
Nigeria is taking money from crude oil upstream and is wasting it on midstream and downstream activities with no benefits to Nigerians. Because that money, that crude oil upstream, you can sell it, collect the dollars, give to the Central Bank of Nigeria. CBN will use it to do balance of payment. The naira equivalent it gets from selling the dollars to the market, it will remit to the federal government. And federal government will have enough money to fund its budget without borrowing.
now let me get back to NNPC. There was something that is happened when Obasanjo appeared on Channels TV. He talked about how he sold the refineries before he left, and Yaradua, who took over from him, was convinced to reverse that because NNPC, they were claiming that they could manage it. Can you tell us a little bit about behind the scene, what happened at that period?
So let me give you a little history. Shell and British Petroleum. Shell built Port Harcourt Refinery, 1965. Okay, and the reason why they built it then, PH1, was to basically get low poor fuel oil, AGO, straight run naphtha for their upstream operations. They didn't build it with the intention to refine PMS. That Port Harcourt refinery in Eleme was not built to refine PMS. It was not. Then British Petroleum, I think they built the second leg of it. So you have 60,000 barrels, you have 150,000 barrels. Port Harcourt has a combined installed capacity of 210,000 barrels. Warri has an installed capacity of 125,000 barrels. Kaduna has installed capacity of 110,000 barrels. Okay? Kaduna's problem, when they built it, they were like, okay, if you site refinery in the south, you have to also site it in the north to balance the equation. But the problem with that is the north does not produce crude oil. It doesn't. Even the recent failed Komani and all them, Nasarawa, Bauchi, Gombe, Boronu, Frontier.
Did you say failed? I thought they said they discovered oil.
What oil? From where?
I don't know. That's what they told us.
From where? They didn't find any oil. They've not found any oil. They find.
But there was a celebration.
There was no celebration. They were celebrating seismic and field exploration activities. They didn't tell you they had found oil. If they had found oil, it would be all over the news that the north has started producing oil. There's always field development, from finding oil and doing field development to getting your actual first oil. Uganda found oil years ago, but Uganda is going to achieve first oil in 2025. Uganda will be doing 210,000 barrels, 230,000 barrels from this year. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, Uganda is landlocked. In 2023, when I was invited to speak at Africa Energy Week, I met the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Minerals and Mines for Uganda. And she told me, she said that they are working with Total and CNOOC to build an export pipeline to take that crude oil, some of it, not all of it. So he said that they plan to take about 170,000 barrels daily to Tanzania, to a port in Tanzania, and then ship. Because Uganda is landlocked. Uganda is not bordered by the sea. So the only way to take crude oil out if you're exporting is to a port in Tanzania. And you have your right of way fee of $30 per barrel. So basically, Total and Sinnoc are going to be with the government, are going to be sharing in that pipeline transportation fee. Then she said it's 60,000 barrels they will keep in Uganda and they will build a refinery to avoid the mistake Nigeria made. That was what she told me. Okay? Now, let me come back. The North cannot produce oil. So you take a refinery to Kaduna, how are you going to transport the crude oil from Niger Delta to the Northwest? They built a 674-kilometer pipe that links from Escravos. They have a loop. It goes through the Chanomi Creek. It's a water body in Warri. And then it goes all the way through the River Niger tributary and River Benue and River Niger tributary from, it goes, it's not, it's a pipe, so you can go through line. It goes from Warri to Auchi to Lokoja to Suleja, then to Kaduna. That pipe has been vandalized a few times. 674 kilometers. It's almost the same distance for AKK pipeline, even if that's a separate pipeline for gas. The pipeline transportation fee and the logistic cost of transporting crude oil to Kaduna will make it difficult for a refiner managing the Kaduna refinery to achieve a positive cracking margin from a crack spread. Okay? So these three refineries, 1965, 1978, the last one was completed in 1989, were built. They went out of service. I think the last one went out of service in 2003. Okay? I think that was Warri, if I'm not mistaken. And since then, Nigeria has been importing petroleum products. Okay? So how do you have a situation where these refineries are not working? Obasanjo came. Obasanjo was frustrated by it not working. And then he called experts in. He told them, he first called, I think he called Shell first because they were the ones who built the first one in 1965. Said they should come and take over the management of it. I said, they said they don't want any part of it. He said, like they said, because number one, those refineries basically are small. They typically will not, be involved in anything that is less than 250,000 barrel capacity because that's commercial size. Number two, there is too much corruption associated with it. They've seen it because they built it. They understand the sector very well. They know what's happening. Okay? And then number three, they are old. So 2003, you didn't have like a Petroleum Industry Act that spells out clear rules for how the midstream will operate. Okay? For example, in 2003, which is about 22 years ago, there was nothing like Section 317, 7 to 11 of the Petroleum Industry Act that says that if you have existing refining capacity in Nigeria, the regulator, which is NMDPRA, is not allowed to give import permits to anybody to import petroleum products into the country. And there is a technical specification for the quality of product you can bring into Nigeria. For PMS, for diesel, for jet. There's a technical specification that has been laid down by the regulator for diesel on flashpoint, on sulfur, for petrol on sulfur, on octane rating. There was nothing like that. So Shell understood that because Shell also has its own refineries abroad. And some of the reason why they are still here is because Nigeria has 34 blends of crude oil, but they are mostly light grade crude oil. They are sweet crude with very low sulfur levels, 0.15%, compared to the sulfur levels you have in crude in other parts of the world of between 0.5 and higher. It's easy to refine. You get more transportation fuels. So a lot of the crude oil they refine in Nigeria, they also send to their own refineries abroad. So why would they want to get mixed up in a mess? So after that, OBJ was like, okay, you know what? Let's bring in technical consultants to even appraise the assets, do evaluation and appraise the asset to see if it's still a going concern. They brought in technical consultants. They did an evaluation, they appraised it, and the consultant said it's moribund, that you should sell it as is for $1. That's the truth. Mr. President said that how can you say we should sell it for $1? That if he does that, Nigerians will say that he sold it to his friends and family. That he can't do that. So that was when he now started shopping for interested parties who are Nigerians, who can come together, form a consortium, because then as at 20 years ago, 18 years ago, some of them didn't have the financial capacity they had now. To put all of that money together, they needed to come together. They formed the consortium, popularly the Blue Star Consortium, to buy up Port Harcourt Refinery. Port Harcourt Refinery was sold for a bid, if I'm not mistaken, between $500 and $600 million. Kaduna Refinery was sold to Chinese National Petroleum Corporation, CNPC, for $100 million. And the reason why CNPC bid low at $100 million is because Kaduna is far from crude oil feedstock. And the plan CNPC had was that they were going to build an export pipeline to take crude oil from Niger Republic to Kaduna, not even from Nigeria. Because they knew the challenges of the Niger Delta. That was their plan. They won that bid, and then some people told Baba that $100 million is too low compared to what Blue Star got Port Harcourt and this thing for. Let's tell them to raise it to 150, 145 or 150. CNPC said no, we placed the bid we want, we're not raising it. That was how CNPC said they're no longer interested. And then it was now offered to the Blue Star Consortium, who got it, Kaduna, together. Yeah? And then the successor came. The final documents were not signed before OBJ left because he felt like successor would continue from where he started. The successor came and reversed it. And the whole history of turnaround maintenance monies started.
Where are we now? I saw that you told, is it Channels, Rise, that Warri is not producing anything as of today. Why are they telling us what is not happening?
No, Warri is not producing petrol. Warri is they're doing naphtha. Naphtha is the base, the component that you use to crack premium motor spirit petrol. And the reason why the modular refineries in Nigeria cannot produce petrol is because most of them, 10,000 barrel capacity. I think OPAC has 10,000 barrels. Aradel has 11,000 barrels in River State. Walter Smith has 5,000 barrels. DuPont Midstream has 2,500 barrels in Edo State. The reason they cannot produce PMS is because modular refineries lack what they call a catalytic converter or a catalytic reforming unit that can distill PMS, crack naphtha, and distill PMS into lighter derivatives. And the interesting thing is, look, one of the proof that you're producing PMS in a refinery is that you actually recover petroleum gases at the boiling point about 25 degrees centigrade. That's one of the proof. So if you're not recovering petroleum gases for LPG, you're not producing PMS.
They say that they are burning it, they are not recovering.
So LPG has commercial value, and Nigeria needs a lot of LPG. A refiner will not burn something that is of commercial value for free. So just imagine the logic. How are you burning LPG? Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. Think about it. You can imagine LPG. A 12 kg cylinder in Nigeria now is anywhere between 15 and 18,000 naira, which means 1 kg of LPG, propane and butane mixed, is trading at anywhere around maybe 1,300, 1,200 naira per kg. How are you willfully burning LPG that has economic value without recovering it? Does it make sense?
All right.
Second proof that they are not refining, because they are not. Yeah, they are doing SRN, straight run naphtha. They are doing household kerosene. Maybe they are doing AGO. I'm not sure they are doing AGO yet. They can't actually export what they produce there. as compared to Dangote. Dangote has been exporting. It's been exporting to Southeast Asia. It's been exporting to Western Europe. It's been exporting to the UK. You know, I think he started exporting to a few countries in Africa. He started exporting to Angola, if I'm not mistaken. The Ghanaian government is in talks with him. South Africa is in talks with him. You know, and a few countries around Central Africa. Okay, he's been exporting. Another proof that what they are doing in Warrior and Port Harcourt is not very clear and is not producing petrol and is not producing based on the standards and frameworks that has been set by regulators all over the world, and even the regulator in Nigeria, is that you cannot export it internationally. Nobody will take it because the flash point, the octane rating, distillation level, the sulfur content will never match up. How? You're basically taking naphtha and you're blending naphtha with straight run gasoline to produce blended PMS, which does not even clear for the regulatory minimum that has been set by the Nigerian regulator.
All right, we will quickly touch on other aspects of the economy, but before we do that, and I see some of our people are willing and they are ready to come in and talk to you. But before we do that, why is it that the managing director of the NNPC, that the same person has been there for a while and it doesn't appear as if he's doing well? Why is it difficult to change him?
Well, that's a question for the president because, you know, me, I'm surprised that Nigeria was incompetence. I'll tell you, I always say it, I'm not afraid of anyone. I'm only afraid of God. Nigeria was incompetence. That's a country. Nigeria is not a country that has a culture of rewarding meritocracy. If Nigeria was a system that rewarded merit, a lot of the very distinguished professionals that are listening on this webinar and who live in all different parts of the world, they'll be back home building. Nigeria doesn't reward merit. It rewards connections and incompetence. Okay? To be honest with you, I can't explain it because it's insane. This is the first time in the history of NNPC that you have so much loans that were structured through modified carrier agreement. As a matter of fact, last year, September, I mentioned that NNPC was owing international oil traders $6.8 billion for what they call vendor financing agreements. That 6.8 billion is part of the monies I mentioned earlier. They were owing vendors $6.8 billion. Basically, what happens is there's a crude oil swap system that was developed where you give international oil traders crude oil, they give you back PMS. Rudolph, PMS is only 43% of a barrel of crude oil. From a barrel of crude oil, you get 73 liters of PMS. I think you get about 175 or 179 liters in total. Diesel is the second highest. Then you have Jet A1, automotive turbine kerosene. You have petrochemical feedstock. You have carbon black, which is your petroleum coke. You have bitumen binders. You have what's it called? Base oil used for producing lubricants, and a few other derivatives. Then you have propane gases. The kind of crude oil you refine determines if it's more propane or butane, because light grade crude, which is what you do in Nigeria, gives you more propane than butane. Heavy grade crude that has a lower API degree gives you more butane than propane. You know, for LPG, Nigeria needs more butane than propane. So you give them crude oil, they give you back PMS. And because of the relationship, what you had was NNPC was not remitting the crude oil that was agreed in their transactions in exchange for the PMS that had already been delivered. Nigeria was importing about 2 billion liters of PMS monthly, if I'm not mistaken, according to them. By the way, Nigeria does not consume more than 35 million liters a day, but NNPC says that they consume 70 million. And that the other 35 million is lost through smuggling. Rudolph, how possible is it to take 35 million liters of PMS by trucks, 33,000 liter trucks, 45,000 liter trucks through semi-border, through Idiroko, to other parts of sub-Saharan Africa? How? On a daily basis. It's impracticable. Okay? So you have these swaps, and these swaps is the reason why the monies, so-called monies that NNPC said they declared in profits. I said, look, those profits are paper profits. They've not remitted any money to the FGN. So if you're not remitting any money as dividend to your benefactor, who is your shareholder, major shareholder, sole shareholder, where's the money? Later, they came out and admitted finally that, oh, they had to defray the cost of all the under recovery they paid for subsidy on importing PMS with the profits that they made.
So
that is the legacy of the current leadership of NNPC, and that's why I've always said that if the president is serious about reforms and is serious about moving Nigeria forward, he first has to take out the board and management of NNPC as this day out. That's the first step before we talk about any other thing. They're incompetent.
Now, let's talk about other aspects of the economy. Where do we start? The exchange rate. What is... Okay, our guest is in the dark. I think maybe there's power outage in Abuja where he is. Kevin, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about the exchange rate. What is going on? The president in the budget presentation announced that he's expecting the currency, the naira, to get to 1,500 naira to $1 by sometime this year. And that's what he used, the benchmark he used to budget. Is that what you think might happen? And why is he confident that it's going down instead of going up?
So, the exchange rate is tied directly to FX. You can't talk about exchange rate stability without talking about the supply of dollars to the economy. You can't. And the reason why the exchange rate is where it is because you don't have patient capital coming into Nigeria. Look at the major sources of FX for the government, for the system. NNPC was a major source. NNPC is supposed to be contributing 80% of the supply to the market. 80%. All the non-oil export talk is idealistic at best. Now, I'm not saying that the economy should not be diversified. It should be diversified. But the reality today is that your major source of FX is NNPC. That's your reality today. If your supply of FX from them dropped 90% within the last decade, how do you expect for foreign investors to have confidence to bring in monies into Nigeria, change it to Naira, and have their Naira stock here? They don't have dollar supply to be able to change it back to dollars and move their monies out. That's the one question every institutional investor that has been approached to bring money to Nigeria has asked the government. What's your net asset ratio with your external asset managers? Because these guys, they speak to banks. These are their bankers. Your Standard Chartered, your UBS, your BNP Paribas, your Credit Suisse, I think Credit Suisse is now UBS, your JP Morgan. They are the bankers to the same institutional investors. They speak to each other. So if they are telling, okay, Nigeria says we should come invest, they say we should bring dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. The question we have for them is, what's the supply of dollars to their central bank? If in 35 years we want to pull our money out, what's the guarantee that we'll have the dollar liquidity to be able to buy dollars to pull our monies out of the economy? And we'll have a situation where our internal rate of return is not lower than the external risk of currency fluctuation or volatility, which means that we'll fall below hurdle rate. Okay? That's the one question every foreign investor is asking. Now, if the government is unable to answer, and I'll tell you what, they had a roadshow in New York. I think they went for IMF, World Bank group meetings, and I saw a video of where the governor and deputy governor and finance minister were speaking to investors, and someone asked the deputy governor a question about net asset ratio, net external reserves, and he couldn't answer. So if your president is telling you that he's expecting naira to appreciate, that's plausible. I don't think naira is going to drop below 2,000 naira to $1. I don't think that's going to happen. But your major source of FX are your non-autonomous NNPC, your autonomous, your diaspora remittances, your foreign portfolio investors, your foreign direct investors that are non-speculative. Those are the people who are concerned. Even the FPIs are concerned because they are hot money. Okay. How do you guarantee that they can move their monies out of Nigeria? You cannot guarantee that they can move their monies out of Nigeria. So if you don't have liquidity from these sources that is higher than the demand for for dollars, you don't have an equilibrium. You must achieve an equilibrium. It's called the Guidetti principle in central banking, that the demand for dollars from M for capital and dividend remittances must not be higher than your supply of dollars to the economy. It's basic principle in central banking all over the world. Unfortunately, Nigeria is not a country that respects principles. Nigeria does not respect economic principles. That's why things are not working. Economic principle works in every part of the world. It's just like you're flying a jet, okay? The laws of aerodynamics apply. A pilot will only crash a plane when he violates the laws of aerodynamics. The principles work. The reason why it's not working in Nigeria is because the leaders don't respect the principles. So if you can't tell them that we're going to have liquidity to supply the markets to the extent where your demand for capital and dividend remittance from M in 12 months is not higher than your supply of FX to them, to the market, they're not going to bring their money. Period.
Quite interesting. Let me ask you, just before we started hearing about ways and means. So someone like me, it became something that is people who are not economists or deep into the business environment started hearing during Buhari's time. What is it? What is ways and means? How are they still borrowing money using ways and means? How has it been going in the past?
So ways and means is a principle that is usually designed into central banking. In Nigeria, it's in the CBN Act of 2007. So OBJ with then Soludo was actually Soludo and OBJ were the architects. Soludo, OBJ, and Okonjo-Iweala. They were the architect of the CBN Act. Nigeria didn't have a CBN Act. CBN Act is the Bible that governs the operations of the central bank. It's a rule book that they must abide by. BOFIA is the Bank and Other Financial Institution Act. That is the one that was created to govern the financial system. The commercial and non-commercial banks, the merchant banks and the likes of them. So you have BOFIA, then you have the CBN Act. Up until 2007, Nigeria didn't have a CBN Act that was market-based and properly structured and that could meet up with international best practice for central banking. So Soludo, Okonjo-Iweala, and the president then, OBJ, came up and said, let's create a provision in the CBN Act that allows for the federal government to borrow from the central bank 5% equivalent of its real revenues for the previous accounting year. So I'll give you an example. If in 2024, the federal government's real revenues was 10 trillion naira, 5% of 10 trillion naira for 2024 would be 500 billion. So this ways and means simply says that the federal government can borrow 500 billion from the central bank as an IOU for the first 3 months. For the first 3 months is an IOU. After 3 months, it goes into an overdraft. For the first 3 months, it attracts interest of 0.5% per month. After 3 months, it becomes an overdraft that will be attracting your MPR plus 30, your monetary policy rate plus 30. Monetary policy rate, if I'm not mistaken, is anywhere between around 26.75%, if I'm not mistaken today. Plus 30, which is nearly 30%. That's your ways and means. Guess what they did? Between 2007 and 2015, Yaradua and Jonathan took a combined total of 869 billion only. Only. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing it is so that you hear the shocker. Between 2015 till date, the successors took about 29 trillion.
So
I'm coming. Now, how do you finance it? It's very important because the Central Bank of Nigeria you're going to borrow money from, they are not magicians. How do they get that money to finance ways and means? There are three major sources. There's public sector CRR, public sector cash reserve ratio. Yeah. Public sector was basically crashed into TSA in 2015. So it's 0% interest. Number one. If they don't have enough cash, they go to private sector CRR, the banks. So they basically say that every monies that Nigerians deposit in a bank, if the CRR today is 50%, which it is today, the CRR rate today is 50%. 50 kobo of every 1 naira deposited in a Nigerian bank will be parked at the Central Bank of Nigeria. The CBN, under MFLA, took that CRR from the banks. Now, the purpose of a CRR, because this same situation played out in Lebanon, it played out in Venezuela, it played out in Ghana. And I'll explain the correlation between abusing ways and means and exchange rates fluctuation and volatility. CRR is supposed to be a tool that the central bank uses to suck out liquidity in the banking system, yeah, and stabilize the supply of cash, money supply in the economy. That's the reason central banks created CRR as a tool. MFLA took all that liquidity and gave it to the federal government as ways and means. Public sector CRR, private sector CRR was not enough. He went ahead and created what they call quantitative easing and created monies from the system that didn't exist and pumped into the economy. Now, the problem is this. When you create money that doesn't exist through quantitative easing, you must generate enough growth to pay the government back taxes and dividends from any government-owned enterprises that matches how much you put into the system. If you don't do that, and cash supply from creating money that doesn't exist exceeds productivity and tax back to the government and revenues back to the government, what happens is that you've not only created inflation, you've also created supply of money that is not backed by reserves or assets, and your currency will nosedive. And so you just saw the Naira started dropping. Between 2019, Naira started dropping from 365 and started crashing. Because between 2019 and 2022, they created 17 trillion into the economy and pumped it into the economy to finance budget deficits. The government didn't have enough cash from revenues, tax and non-tax sources. So it just went to ways and means. CBN governor pretty much told the president, don't worry about your deficits. We're going to fund it. The president, of course, didn't understand it, so he didn't know what the governor of CBN was saying. And he said, okay. They created 17 trillion between 2019 and 2022. And between the same 2019 and 2022, the Naira dropped from 365 and crashed like 1,000. It came back, stabilized, and then the government had to release the peg because it didn't have the dollars to defend it. So that's ways and means. And the same thing happened in Ghana because Ghana has it in the Bank of Ghana Act 612 is there. Ways and means is there. The outgoing president violated the Ways and Means Act, and the cedis dropped. Cedis dropped like 4 times.
So, So people like you know these things. Maybe you know that the government is going above, living above their means. What has changed watching what Tinubu has done since he came in? What did he do that changed? Are we still in that situation? Are we in a better place?
So I'll tell you, even if this is difficult to hear, the truth is that most of the problems he has today was inherited. But of course, he can't blame his predecessor because they are from the same. So most of the problems are inherited because I explained how the exchange rate cost the landing cost of petrol to drop, even if he should have interrogated the actual daily consumption. The actual daily consumption was the basis for the fraud in the system. The numbers they were quoting is actually twice of the actual daily consumption. So instead of cut off subsidy on petrol, should have first interrogated actual daily consumption to see what the government can actually subsidize, because that was the basis and genesis of the cost of living crisis. Okay? So he removed the subsidy because the government couldn't put up about 4 trillion naira, I think, for 2023, 2022 budget. Subsidy was approaching about 5.56 trillion naira in 2022. And it was projected to rise. He couldn't put it up. The FX subsidy, government was paying over $320 million every month subsidizing FX because of the peg. Couldn't put up the money because the CBN had negative external reserves, negative net reserves, negative net asset ratio. Yeah, that's the right word to use. He couldn't put up the money. So he removed that subsidy also on FX and the rate started moving. Then, he came and said, okay, let's do tax reforms. Let's do a comprehensive overhaul. Centralize the collection of taxes from 62 MDAs, including the customs. Take away the revenue collection function, NUPRC, NIMASA, just name them, all the revenue collecting agencies. Take it away from, strip them, centralize it to one revenue collecting agency so that we can increase the collection, reduce the cost of collection fee, because all of them had their cost of collection fee. Custom has 1% of everything they generate. So if, for example, custom generates 20 trillion naira in 1 year, they'll collect 200 billion. That's it. NUPRC has between 4 and 7% of whatever they collect. So if, for example, NUPRC generates $1 billion in royalty oil, they'll collect 47% of that as cost of collection fee for running this thing. So let's remove all of that, centralize it into one Nigerian Revenue Service. Let's review all the nuisance taxes. Let's review all the taxes. Let's look at the ones that conflict and contradict each other. Repeal what we need to repeal, reenact, make sure that we reduce the nuisance taxes. River State, for example, has 93 states and local government levies, 93. And improve ease of doing business. And centralize everything to like 8. Okay? Let's review the VAT, structure for VAT, which is being the most contentious. The system for sharing VAT was based on derivation, equity of states, and population. Yeah? Even if personally I think that the system for sharing VAT should only be based on 2 things. Derivation, mostly derivation, and that derivation has to include input and output VAT. Let me not say VAT, because if I say IGR, I'm even talking about the major principle that governs the operation of Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission. It should be based on derivation and IGR alone. It should not include population. It should not include equity of states. Okay? So that's section 77, which is the most contentious of VAT, is been revised from 20% for derivation to 60% for derivation. for output and input VAT. Federal government stepped down their share of VAT from 15% to 10%, and then created a stabilization fund for 5% for states that fall below the threshold on a monthly basis. Okay? And then on the fiscal reforms, it's very comprehensive. Like four different bills. On fiscal reforms, for example, for local government, what the reforms has done is that the local government now has a framework, even if the mode of implementation will be a problem. Because I saw that the Edo State governor, suspended local government chairman. And then when the federal government said he cannot do that, he got the councillors to impeach the local government chairman. And the federal government is kicking back and saying he cannot do that either. The governors are not happy with that. And to be honest with you, that is one reason why some of them are opposing the tax bills. Okay? And a particular part of the country is bordered that the collections they get on a monthly basis from FAC is going to reduce because of the changes to the tax bills, even if a lot of people have actually not sat down to read the tax bills. They are detailed and they're comprehensive. And for you to actually get the most of anyone who is explaining to you, you have to ask specific questions. If you just say, okay, explain the tax bills to me, I wouldn't know where to start from. I can only give you highlights. But if you bring specific areas of it, I can break down and say, okay, this is what it was, and this is what it's going to be, and this will be an impact on the economy. Sorry. So, a lot of the problems he has was inherited. Is moving against the tide. I tell you, it's moving against the tide. The problem I have with him is you can't tell people to tighten their seatbelts and that we're going to turn around the ship while it's moving 180 degrees, and you not talk to your people to realign. They're still buying new cars. National Assembly budgets billions of naira to buy cars. The cost of running governments. And Rudolph, in 2023, NNPC paid out 583 billion naira in emoluments to staffs.
Yeah, I know. I once interviewed 2 senators, and they told me that we Nigerians complain about how much they spend at the National Assembly, that is not up to 3% of the budget. And that they are one of the
Rudolph, the real corruption in Nigeria is in procurement fraud. It's not even, in salaries, and it's in procurement fraud. That's where the real corruption is. And that's why I favor the zero-based budgeting system. You have to justify your budgets.
Yes. I thought that one president, I'm not sure who, or maybe said that they will end what they are doing currently. Because they wouldn't want to. They wouldn't want to change the budget framework. The real corruption in Nigeria, Rudolph, is procurement fraud. That's the meat of it. Now, you are in Abuja. How do you explain to people that every year the Asura presidency will budget for pots, pans, table? Do they change this every day? People who are confused, people on the street, people who are not sophisticated, but they know that there is no reason why somebody would change their kitchen tools every day, every year. What is going on? Is it that they are so lazy about specifying things in the budget that they need? Why is it that they have to buy printing machine every year for one office of the chief of staff? Do they break every year?
Rudolph, you see, the reason why a fish starts to rot from the head, and why the way the human system is designed, every part of our body is connected to our central nervous system. If anything happens to here, in fact, your ability to lift your hands and use your hands like this is connected to your neurons. If anything happens to your neurons that controls your ability to do your hands like this, yeah, it goes. Leadership. The people who run governments, the different layers of government, civil and public service, they take their cue from their leader. They look to their leader to take their cue. When they look to their leader and they see, they have moral justification for what they do. If the president goes around states to see the actual state of the projects, constituency projects that they budget for, he sees budget line items, he just picks a random project. Oh, you budgeted 25 billion for this. Let me just go without even informing you. What's actually going on the ground? And he goes there and he sees that it's all bush, nothing is happening. He tells his people, please call the contractor, call the minister, call the governor. What's going on? If they cannot explain, he refers them for prosecution. Everybody will sit up. If the president goes to the civil service, shows up at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning randomly to a ministry, and he just randomly starts walking through and says, oh, you guys are supposed to have about 600 staffs working here. You're barely 100. What's going on? And they say, Mr. President, this is how it is. So people don't show up. They have people who come to sign in for them and they don't show up for work. And he's like, okay, we'll sack them. We have a basis to sack them. We'll sack them. Everybody will fall in line. You have a system in Nigeria where the civil and public service and the contractors that, take projects from the government, yeah, they take their cue from the top. They see the body language and then they take their cue. They take their cue. That's what it is.
So I think at this point we take a break. When we come back, I want you to talk about seaports, and which you have a unique opinion on what's going on in that, and a little bit about this opposition against the tax in the north, why they are opposed to it, and then we take questions from our audience. Thank you so much. I know we didn't plan to stay this long, but we really enjoy the details you're giving to us, because sometimes we see the headlines and we don't know what is behind it. And also, maybe you can weigh in on this too. The story in the news today about Wike and the federal capital budgeting 10 billion naira for furniture and rent for the National Assembly leadership, the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, the Senate President, and the Deputy Senate President. So we take a break and then we'll come back. Thank you so much, Kevin. All right, welcome everybody back again to our conversation with Kelvin Emmanuel, who has been giving us insight into the Nigerian economy and the outlook for 2025. So, Kelvin, before we bring in our audience, just quickly, if you can, tell us the state of the ports, seaports. People are telling me that there are seaports in the southern part of the country, in Warri, and I don't know the seaports, but that they are functioning. I want to hear from you. What's going on?
Okay, the people that are saying they are functioning, how many vessels come to berth at call at Warri on a daily basis compared to Lagos? How many vessels call to Onne compared to Lagos? What do they bring? Warri's channel draft is very low. Calabar's channel draft is about 5 meters. Calabar receives like 1 vessel per week compared to Lagos. Onne is designated as exploration and production, E&P, which means that port categorization makes the fee for non-oil and gas cargoes like 4 times the fee for oil and gas cargoes, which means you're not competitive. Can you ship in a car through Onne? Can you ship in a container of shoes and clothes or spare parts from Guangzhou to Onne? Who are the port operators? Do they call ships from different parts of the world, like ECM and CGM does for Papa and Tinkan? AP Mola, can they? So these are the questions that we need to ask. The only functional seaport in Nigeria is Lagos. Lekki is just coming on stream. Lekki is not able to call as many vessels as ECM and CGM is able to, because the 2 companies that are the operators and they got the concession are not actually shipping companies. Tolerance is not a shipping company. Tolerance is actually owned by the Tolerance is a consortium that is actually owned by the Singaporean government, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Tolerance owns the Dofil Premier business. Yeah. It has affiliations. So the Chinese company and Singaporean company that built Lekki Deep Seaport, the channel ground of 16 meters, is actually not a shipping company that can call vessels from different parts of the world. AP Mola is talking about building a deep seaport in Badagry because Badagry actually has a shorter shore to sea distance, yeah, and has a higher channel draft than Lekki and Apapa and Tinkan, and it's closer to the Gulf of Guinea. Okay, that final business case has been released by ICRC, the Concession Regulatory Commission, and now the Minister of Blue Economy is saying, oh, they're going to engage investors and work with them to see that the share of the states, the share of the FG, and the share of the private sector is achieved for them to start working on it. So my question is, how is it that you only have Lagos with functional seaports and everybody else is coming to Lagos? Because that contributes to the IGR the states generate, that contributes to the FG VAT generated through Lagos. That contributes to the economic activity. Because if you come to clear your container in Lagos, there are levies you have to pay to the Lagos state government. There's somehow.
Could that be the reason why they don't want other ports to be functioning? I think that would be petty. No.
Well, I tell you what, Dolph. There's a political handshake between the Southwest and Northwest. Very, very, very clearly. Every other region in Nigeria is seen as a political minority. And you have to come take permission from the Southwest and Northwest to be able to get anything done in every other part of Nigeria. I don't know how in formation of Nigeria and the amalgamation between the North and Southern Protectorate, I don't know if there was any place in the charter that Lord Lugard signed that said that the Southeast, the South-South, the Northeast and North Central are political minorities, and the political majorities are the Southwest and Northwest, and they have to keep sharing power between themselves. Because you have a situation where you don't even have horizontal standard gauge rail lines that can say, okay, you know what, only functional seaports is in Lagos. If you dock your goods in Lagos, you can put your cargo on a train and take it to Aba, or take it to Port Harcourt, or take it to Enugu, or take it to Onitsha, or take it to Yenegua, or take it to Warri. No, you have to pay another 5 or 6 million naira for a container, for a truck to carry your container. You'll be praying and asking them every 1 hour, how far, where are you? Well, all right, okay. Police stopped you, customs stopped you. These are realities, Rudolph. These are daily realities. You have to pray until your container arrives at the location. So tell me how that is not marginalization. It's economic marginalization. Because Jan de Nor, a Dutch company, OBJ gave them a contract in 2006. Okay, raise the channel draft and rehabilitate the Calabar deep seaport. But Calabar, by the way, was the first federal capital of Nigeria. First federal capital. Calabar seaport was the first deep seaport that was built in the marina. Okay? So how the government has allowed it to lay to waste is befuddling. Raise the channel draft. It was not done then. And then they had issues of the fact that if you look at the geography, you see that the marina actually has some estuaries and rivers that leads into the ports. So usually in the cycle, of the year, sand flows from the northern part of Cross River State in Obudu down to the southern part of Cross River, to Calabar, and it forms silts. Now, those ships, wide-bodied vessels, they go deep in. If you don't dredge the silt out, the ships cannot come in because the silt has come up and the sand will prevent the ship from coming into port to dock. That's what they mean by raising the channel draft. Yeah? So you have to dredge the sand. Okay? And then Akwa Ibom deep seaport was proposed. They've surveyed it, they've done engineering drawings, feasibility studies. They've applied for approval from ICRC, Concession Regulatory Commission. It's still at that phase. It's not past that phase yet. Even Badagry has passed. Okay? A president that really is interested in decentralizing economic activity, because a seaport is more important than an airport. A seaport is equivalent to like 10 airports. An airport is not as important as a seaport. An airport is important, but not as important as a seaport. Because a seaport is the economic gateway into an economy. It's the gateway into an economy. A seaport is the gateway into an economy. Okay? A president that wants to decentralize the economy will be at the forefront of ensuring that all layers of government, Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, with the MP under the ministry, is championing the cause for ensuring the meet of all regulatory approvals. The federal government puts up its own equity share. And they start cutting, because if you don't pass regulatory approvals and the government doesn't put up its own equity share, the private sector participation, which is supposed to be 60% for Akwa Ibom, is not going to come. Now, the southeast is landlocked. So obviously you can't build a seaport into the southeast that will have, wide-bodied vessels, Panamax vessels come in. But the southeast needs Cross River, it needs One, it needs Akwa Ibom. Just like the northeast also and north central, they also need One, they need Cross River, they need Akwa Ibom. If you're not raising the channel draft, even if you've settled out of court with Jan Denol for contract variation costs since 2022, and you're not at the forefront of ensuring that the Akwa Ibom BC port project starts, it's economic marginalization. Because explain to me how you go to bring goods and you come to Lagos and then it's even more difficult to move your goods from Lagos to the destination it is to ship it from China or from the UK or from anywhere in America down to Lagos. Explain it.
Thank you so much. The other question I wanted to know if you want to weigh in on is the 10 billion that the federal government is through the Federal Capital Territory paying for furniture and rent for Babio and Speaker of the House. I know this is not this is more politics than economy, but what is going on? How is that the responsibility of the Federal Capital Territory to pay for furniture when there is budget for the National Assembly?
Rudolph, I don't want to comment. I don't want to comment on anything that has to do with the Minister of the FCT. I'll be very honest with you. With due respect to him, I don't want to comment. I wish them well, to be honest with you. But there are so many things in Nigeria that doesn't make any sense. You know, it doesn't make any sense because if the National Assembly gets all the budget it gets, you know, it doesn't make any sense for you to be, you know, allocating another 10 billion naira for furniture. They just finished refurbishing the National Assembly. So they just finished refurbishment. They were staying in a makeshift location. They just finished refurbishment. So is it like they do refurbishment of National Assembly on a yearly basis or people donate money to that? I don't understand it.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's go to our audience. They are here. They are ready. So let me come to you first. KJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Damages, and thank you, Kelvin. Thank you to the viewers and all the panelists. I thank you so much. Look, listening to you like reading my Bible, I have just so overwhelmingly enjoyed your commentary, and it's so overwhelming. It's more painful for me to even comment than to even, I don't know. You have just covered all the areas which people have refused to touch. The secrecy in the Nigerian oil industry is so terrible that nobody can actually tell. But somehow you have unmasked the masquerade right at the village square. Thank you for doing that. I also want to ask you just one question, if I may. What is the level, or how is there truly going to be a dock, in Abia State, the one that the governor is constructing, and how far is that with that plan?
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. So for the Abia State to do a dock, it has to dredge. You know, like I said, the southeast, if you look at the geography of Nigeria, the southeast is mostly landlocked. So it has to dredge. But then the question is, what size of vessels can they bring into that dock? For me, that's the question. Because if you're bringing a small size vessel, small body vessel, you have to transship. And because there's a cost to transshipment, where are you going to transship? Okay. For me, I think what the way forward is for the Southeast and the South-South Governors Forum to work together, because they have to take their case to the president. They have access. We ask for a meeting, take it to him and say, this is how we want you to scratch our back, and this is how we're going to scratch our back. You know, take the case that we need these seaports to be operational to decongest Lagos and drive economic activity in these regions. Because I'll tell you what, companies decide on investments based on certain factors, especially in the real sector now. In the real sector, specifically in the real sector, and specifically manufacturing, access to ports is a major decider. Access to seaports, access to feedstock or raw materials, access to off-takers. If you have access to ports, access to feedstock and raw materials, the off-taker bit can be handled. Okay? If they don't have seaport, they won't come. So the argument people make of, you have a lot of economic activity in the Southwest, you have a lot of companies in the Southwest, that's why port operations are thriving. No, that's not the way it works. Economic activity is thriving in Southwest because the Western maritime flank is the most active maritime flank in Nigeria. And you can't build an economy without the seaports. You cannot. Okay? So the Southeast and Southwest Governors Forum, they have to come together and say, Calabar is important to us. Bakassi is important to us. Okay? Abia can be an inland port. Okay? Onne is important to us. So you have to change the port categorization of Onne from oil and gas to include non-oil and gas so that you can revise the fees that are 4 times the fees on oil and gas cargoes. Okay? And decongest the Western maritime flank. That's what they have to do.
All right. Thank you, KJ. Let's go to Mr. James.
Thank you for coming. Can you please hear me?
Yeah, you can speak up, Mr. James. We can hear you, please.
Thank you for coming. Can you please hear me?
Yes.
Good. Mr. Kelvin, thank you. If I may ask, are you a teacher or were you a teacher at any time? I'm asking because I'm a teacher.
Thank you, sir. No, I wasn't actually a teacher at any time, sir.
Hello? I said, if I may ask, are you a teacher or were you a teacher at any time? I'm asking because I'm a teacher.
No, I wasn't, sir. I wasn't.
He said he wasn't. Mr. James, can you hear us?
My internet is very weak.
All right, we can come back to you, Mr. James.
My internet is weak. Why not?
Yeah.
Allow Mr. Chim.
We'll come back to you.
Go Chim. Back to Mr. Chim. Yeah.
Okay. Chim, welcome to the show.
Good morning, everybody. Somebody's noise is trying to drown us. Can you hear me? Okay, so Kelvin, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I really don't have a question. I'll be lying to you if I only just came here to be informed and educated, which you have done. I recently started watching you on Arise, with the first video being the one Rudolph played, and then I think last night I watched something else where it was between you, Dr. Abati, and what's her name, Vimbai. I thoroughly enjoyed that session. All I just want to say is, it's good when people, sometimes some of us begin to question ourselves if we are crazy, because some of the things we say, and we have a few of our compatriots who come here and, make it look like what you're saying is wrong. So when I see people I have never met, never discussed with, suddenly show up and they begin to project similar thought processes, it is quite cheering, especially when it comes to this port thing. I'm not even going to go into the oil and gas session you had with Rudolph earlier, because I'm a novice in it. So I just came to be educated. So I can't ask you any question on that. But, dovetailing into this port administration you mentioned, I once wrote something on Facebook in the days when we used to, write things. And I questioned why we would have this. In fact, as we were discussing, I went to open the map of Europe right now, and I was looking at all the countries in Europe and the countries that had ports, that had access to the seaport and everything. And many of them, anyone that has multiple endpoints with water has multiple seaports. Germany has Hamburg on top. And then if you go down, the same thing with Spain, Bilbao.
MSC just opened the new airport seaport in Hamburg, by the way.
Exactly. So I've always wondered how a country like Nigeria is doing itself a disservice. And
over 200 million. Over 200 million people.
Exactly. How
with one functional seaport.
Exactly. How we are blessed with the Lagos, and the Lagos itself has multiple endpoints in any case. How we are blessed with the Akwa Iboms and Calabas, and even the inland port of Onitsha, and maybe somewhere in Kogi State or Benue, wherever it is. We are blessed with all these opportunities. But some people sit down in Abuja and Dodan Barracks, when Dodan Barracks was the center point, and decide that they will stifle the whole of this country and leave that Lagos. And when you say it, people who are ethnic minded can't seem to have said it, that we're doing an injustice to Lagos. Lagos. We're doing a huge injustice to Lagos by placing an undue burden on that city. Look at Apapa.
Okay, sorry, let me let you land.
Yeah,
sorry.
So look at Apapa, look at all the congestion on that Apapa, that corridor. And I kept saying, why are we doing this? Open other places. So that if the man who chooses to go to Warri or chooses to go to Calabar, let him have an option. Everything mustn't be Lagos, but some people who are ethnic minded will think, oh no, what are you doing? And I kept on saying, can't you see? Can't you see? So I only came here this morning to say, is cheering to realize I've just checked myself. Thank God I'm not crazy. Because you can easily be making this point and you will start asking yourself, okay, maybe I'm the one that has a problem. But listening to you this morning, my brother, God bless you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
I was going to say, Jim, that before I say what I'm going to say, let me just come back to the fact that in the engineering design for Akwa Ibom Deep Seaport, there is a terminal for fishing trawlers. So Nigeria has not discovered the blue economy around fisheries. There are 4 companies in Nigeria that make about $500 million yearly from fisheries, prawns, shrimps, and the likes of them. Badagry, Bakassi. Yeah, Nigeria has not discovered it yet. I'm just going. So there's a terminal for fisheries, create cold storage. You have trawlers dock. You fish. You bring the fisheries into your cold storage. You can put it in vessels and export, or you can bring it back into the country. Okay, but then let me come back to the point on the fact that Akwa Ibom actually has the shortest shore to sea between the eastern and western maritime corridor in Nigeria, amongst all the littoral states that borders on the Atlantic Ocean. You see this problem you have in the Middle East, the Black Sea is closed. Okay? That aperture that vessels go in that borders between Turkey and Croatia. Yeah? There's a problem there because of disagreements between the political stand in Turkey and Western Europe. You saw what happened to the jet from Azerbaijan. You can't take a commercial vessel through the Black Sea. So the Black Sea into Europe is closed. It's defense waters. Okay? Russia shot down a commercial jet from Azerbaijan, shot it down, and people died. Okay, it crashed and they died. The Mediterranean that takes vessels into the Suez Canal, Egypt says last year they lost $7 billion in revenue because the traffic of vessels coming in from Southeast Asia dropped dramatically, and they started diverting from the Arabian Sea down into the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. It takes them an extra 10 days to do that journey. So if you go to Cape Town now, you see, in that V&A waterfall, sea, you see the traffic of vessels that normally go through either the Black Sea or the Suez, coming down South Africa to come into the southern, this other side, that's South America, North America, and then going to Europe. Afro-Exim commissioned a study to find the bunkering hubs you have along that coast down to South Africa for ships to stop and refuel and do maintenance services. They couldn't find more than 2. Those bunkering hubs are usually bordered around seaports. Nigeria can be a bunkering hub for transshipment, for maintenance, and for refueling of vessels, LPFO, AGO. It can be a bunkering hub, like you build bunkering hubs into those terminals for transshipment and refueling. Apapa can't do it because a lot of wide-bodied vessels, Panamax vessels that go through from Southeast Asia and is coming from the Cape of Good Hope down into either South America or North America, Western Europe, they can't even come into Apapa and Tinkan. They can't. So you have an opportunity there to get traffic, and it comes with a fee. It's not free. If you set up a bunkering hub, or you set up a transshipment hub, you get revenues. Go and see how much Malta generates from transshipment and bunkering. The same Malta that they were doing blending of products that comes into Nigeria. Go and see how much it generates from it. No vision. No vision.
All right.
I was just going to say this in response to what you said.
Thank you, Kelvin. Let's get to Ovie. Ovie, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Kelvin, you're welcome to our Ogbonge show. My question will go around where Dr. Rudolph no gree go. That's because you know no book reach there. That is you you left finance that you stay for 10 years to agro business. And I think you're doing very well in it. My understanding that you also have a partnership with foreign companies. Am I right? Like ASA, Daniels, Midland. That's Emily. Am I correct?
No. I mostly consult.
You only consult, so you're not into those. So I wanted to ask you, what is your take on GMO? Because most of the companies that as you said, you consult with, are primarily kind of involved with most legal entago pretty much all around the world, and I kind of see that you're in business with them. And so I want to know, what is your take on GMO, which is part of our economy too, by the way. I'm not too going far away from it.
I'm not favorably disposed to genetically modified organisms in seeds. Not favorably disposed to it because I'm sorry. If you consider the fact that a lot of the food that comes out of America is actually banned in Europe, it's just like a big flashing signal to the standards you have in Europe compared to the standards you have in America. No offense. So I'm not an exact fan of GMO. Unfortunately, if you look at the agricultural research institutes you have in Nigeria, most of them look at their budget item. They are funding one project in a part of town that has nothing or no consequence to do with their core policy mandate. Policy research institutes in Nigeria are obsolete. They are not functioning. They are not well funded. They don't have proper leadership, proper structure. So they are not even able to do research and development into seeds that are suitable to our weather and to our population. Research and development in Nigeria is not, and this is why I say our culture forms our politics and our politics determines our economy. Because when you talk about these things, people say, "Na English we go chop." That's the response you get. "Na English we go chop." An economy that does not pay attention to R&D is going nowhere. China, for years, has been developing a battery that can take very long range. They've gotten a breakthrough on that, and now they're developing electric cars that can go way longer than Tesla goes. BYD, I was in China last year, January, and what BYD has done is, when BYD started, 15, 12 years ago, I didn't have much hope for BYD. But what BYD has done with electric vehicles is amazing. Because that's a society that believes in research and development. When Donald Trump started with all his, where we're not going to sell semiconductors to China, TSMC, and the Dutch company that provides the background for TSMC's work in Taiwan, we're not going to sell. They basically formed like a governmental consortium to ban the flow of semiconductors to China. The government practically provided R&D budget for their companies to go into R&D to develop their own semiconductors, and China has achieved the breakthrough. When Donald Trump arrested Meng Wanzhou and detained her in Canada in 2018, and then said that Google will stop providing, several American companies will start providing support for Chinese consumption, China went back and started working. Huawei came out with Harmony OS. And a lot of Huawei phones now, most of Huawei phones now run on Harmony OS and not Android. That's an economy that invests in research and development. So if you don't invest in your R&D, you cannot get a good replacement for GMOs. Especially in this situation now where food inflation is over 40% and everybody is desperate for a solution. Nobody is even paying attention to, is it GMO or is it not GMO? Nobody cares. Anything and everything goes.
All right, thank you. James, we want to try again. Let's see if we can hear you.
Yes, I'm sure you can hear me now.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I thank Mr. Kelvin for coming to the show. All he has exposed is just a fraction of the tip of the iceberg of hopelessness and corruption rocking the nation. And I want to re-emphasize that Nigeria is beyond redemption. All we are doing now is just nothing but exercise in futility. There's more to these problems that we are seeing in the political scene. Thank you so much for coming. I will not bother you with questions because you've enlightened us so much. I will leave a private message for you in the private chat. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. James. Let me go to Pansat. You are next, and then I'll go up to Show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodolfo Okonkwo. Welcome to our show, Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel. Happy New Year to everybody, those in the comment section and those in this on this platform. Mr. Emmanuel, just as you were coming to me, then I believe that you aptly described your role, because that's one of the bones I was going to pick with you. Because when I see you on the internet, on TV, I believe you show yourself as to be an economist that is fair and objective. But you have said that you're actually a consultant. You do a lot of consultancy, right? So you have a client-first mindset. You're a professional consultant. Is that right? I just want a yes or no. Are you a consultant and you have a client-first mindset? Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
When you ask me,
I really have a lot to say. I have a lot to say to you. So what I want to do, it's not going to give me a lot of time. So I'm going to be a little.
Yeah. So Ansad, maybe I should reemphasize. You know that that when you come to talk out to our guests, we want you to find your best question and ask your question. We don't encourage. Hold on, Ansad. We don't encourage the audience. We are not interrogating our guests. Find your question or your comment and make your comments. We don't want back and forth. So we're not doing
it's not I don't think that admonishment is necessary. He laid a foundation. I'm saying normally he lays a foundation as an economist, but right now on that question he says a consultant. And that makes a difference in what I'm going to ask him. What is the delay in answering that? You're a consultant.
I'm not at the FBI headquarters going through interrogation. So I'm not. My last official role was on the board of a company, multinational, finance company, finance service.
Look, I have a very short time.
You said that I should answer yes or no. I'm trying to give you a background. I'm consulting for the government. Okay. I mentioned that I'm sitting on the committee, but I'm not at liberty to, give more information. So,
are you consulting for Dangote refineries?
What is the correlation between that and our conversation, please?
No, very, very important in my question, because, like I said, when I see you try to present an objective view. You talked about our NNPCL, but they have a conflict with Dangote. So if you come in and say, look, I'm a consultant for Dangote, then we're going to look at your comments in the light of that discussion.
I'm not a consultant for Dangote. I don't see why you're putting me on the spot and asking me as if I'm going through interrogation at.
In a way, you are going through interrogation not on FBI, but on.
All right, Pansat. what I want you to do now is find your best question and ask our guest. Otherwise, I'll move to somebody else.
Okay, but look, Rudolph, he mentioned Section 77. I have a question on that, on the VAT, right? Section 77. He mentioned that. He mentioned a couple of things that I want to ask me a question on. It's not going to take a long time, especially if you could cut time from his side. Cut the time down from his side.
Pansal, again, I would say ask your one question. If we have the time for second round, we'll come back to you. Otherwise, I will move to somebody else.
Move to somebody else.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Kulata, you're next.
I think I'm next.
Oh, sorry, not Kulata, yeah.
Yeah, but don't worry, Kulata, you're not going to be waiting for long. The question I was going to ask, good evening, Mr. Emmanuel. Nice to meet you. I watch quite a lot of your videos, and every time I try and send them to some of my friends who are still interested in Nigerian topics or discussion, because many people have, they've logged off Nigerian gist. When I send it to some of my friends, especially those who are sympathetic towards this government, they tell me, oh, don't listen to that guy. He works for Dangote. Don't take him serious. Anytime you talk about gas, oil, and the rest of it, they just dismiss it and say he works for Dangote. And I ask them, are you sure? And they just say, no, the way he talks, it works for Dangote. And that's the question that the previous speaker asked you, because that's the only reason why I came to ask that. Do you in any way work for Dangote? But you've answered the question, so I'm not going to belabor the point. You've said it, officially, that you don't work for Dangote, you don't consult for him. So thank you for all that you do for Motherland.
All right. All right. Thank you, Sho. Let's go to Kulata.
All right. Welcome. I'm going to just be quick. First things first. I would like you to differentiate between a refinery and a blending plant, because I've seen you use those words interchangeably, and it confuses a lot of people. So we have Warri Port. I said Warri Port. Look at me. We have Warri Refinery, Port Harcourt Refinery, that, according to government sources, produces naphtha, AGO, maybe kerosene or whatever, but don't produce PMS. So the fast and loose definition you've been using for refinery is tied to PMS. So my first clear question to you is, if crude is taken, I don't want to say refined now, because I like to know your definition of refined, but if crude is processed, and we get naphtha, kerosene, AGO, but we don't get PMS and the related gases, is that refining?
Why do modular refineries not produce PMS?
No, that's not the question I asked you.
No,
is that refining? Okay, let me ask a straightforward question. You take crude, you process it, it produces naphtha, AGO, kerosene, the heavy stuff, but does not produce PMS. Is that refining?
I'm asking you a question back. Why is Walter
You can't answer a question with a question. Just answer me that question.
Mr. Kulata.
Mr. Kulata is the name. Is that refining?
No, you see, you can't.
Okay, let me ask it in another way. Is refining tied to production of PMS?
Hold on. Please hold on. Okay. Nigeria has several modular refineries, but for years has been importing premium motor spirit. Okay? Why have the modular refineries not stepped up to produce PMS? Simple.
Because they don't have a catalytic converter. We all know that. But I'm asking a very specific question. What is refining?
Hold on. Please hold on. They are producing naphtha. They are producing household kerosene. Some of them are doing AGO. They are doing LPFO. Are they producing PMS? No. Why are they not? Because they are modular refineries. They don't have catalytic refining units. Why are they not producing PMS?
Excuse me. My question is very specific.
You're
not answering my question. You're evading my question.
No, I'm not evading your question, because I know exactly where you're going.
I was very specific. I said...
No, I know exactly where you're going. I'm not evading your question.
So, Kulata, hold on, Kevin.
Hold on. I see what's going on. I know exactly where you're going. And I'm asking you back. Nigeria has modular refineries. They've had modular refineries for years, working. As a matter of fact, Aradel, Walter Smith have their own marginal fields that produce the crude oil that they refine. So they operate a vertically integrated model. Why are they not producing PMS? It's a very simple answer. They don't have a catalytic reforming unit.
I just answered that myself.
Hold on, please. I know exactly where you're going. Is LMA producing PMS? No. Why? Because it doesn't have a functional catalytic reforming unit. Is Warri producing PMS? No. Why? Because it doesn't have a functional catalytic reforming unit. So if you don't have a functional CRU, what are you? A modular refinery. Why would you spend over $2 billion? Excuse me. Why would you spend over $2 billion to do turnaround maintenance for a modular refinery that cannot do PMS when you can use that money and build a brand new refinery somewhere else? I know exactly where you're going.
But you're not even answering my question. That's a different question. I'm not asking. Excuse me. Hold on. Can you hold on a second? I'm not saying I purposely told you that PMS not being produced. I take crude, I generate what a modular refinery will generate. Is a very simple question. Is that refining, yes or no? And I'm going to tell you why I'm asking that specific question.
Okay.
The reason I'm asking that specific question is because I've heard you using the word blending in one way or the other, like the Malta blending plant and all whatnot. But we can say these are refining operations, but they've not achieved PMS refining because of lack of CDU and CRU, no catalytic reformer. We can all agree on that. But when we play fast and loose with words and saying there's a blending plant in Malta, hold on, excuse me, can I finish, please? There's a blending plant in Malta, and then whatever Port Harcourt is doing is like Malta is a blending plant. We need to be a bit more concise. You can say, okay, they're refining, but not yet PMS. We all understand that.
I'm very specific. Warri and LMA cannot produce PMS because they don't have a CDU and a CRU. Excuse me, please allow me, please. Okay. I don't expect to give a contractor $2 billion to do turnaround maintenance for Warri and LMA, and then he comes back to me and say you can't produce PMS. It's a modular refinery. If you can't produce PMS, you're a modular refinery. You took $2 billion and then you come back to me and say you can't produce PMS. So how will you get PMS? You blend. That's what you do. You blend. Now, if you blend, what level of ppm are you going to get for sulfur if you blend? Does it meet up with the regulatory limit that is set in the law?
I understand now. Dangote got his first crude in December, and the PMS production, I mean, if I'm not sure with my news here, but the PMS production was sometimes either in July or in August. So should we have called Dangote refinery a modular refinery between the December that I first got crude? Because initially it wasn't producing PMS. Just like any refinery, I mean, PMS is one of the last things you'll produce. So initially it wasn't producing PMS. Should we have been calling Dangote refinery after the launch in December 2023 till it started producing PMS? Should we have called him a modular refinery then? I did not even hear you on TV calling him a modular refinery then.
Excuse me. Dangote didn't start refining in December 2023.
The PMS started coming around, what's it called, August or so, but he received his first crude and started processing back in December 2023, and they said he was exporting AGO or whatever early last year.
I know exactly where you're going, okay? And I'll tell you this, and this was what I said earlier when I was speaking. I said, two major proof that LMA and Warri are not refining PMS, and they don't have a CRO or a CDU, despite all the money that has been expended in TAM. Number one, you can't recover petroleum gases. Because you can't recover petroleum gases, LPG, if you're not refining PMS. Number two, you can't export it. Okay? The so-called company that they said wants to offtake is actually an offshore shell company that was registered as an SPVA in the DMCC. Okay? And that company is originally not a UAE company. It's an SPV registered in an offshore trading zone in the DMCC. So there is no case in which a country that has a population of 9.6 million people and that does about 70 million liters of PMS on a daily basis is importing anything from a government-owned refinery in Nigeria. It's not happening. Okay? Port Harcourt was not designed to produce PMS originally. And even after all the monies they've spent, they've not even been able to build a CRU that can crack naphtha into a premium motor spirit. Warri also, today, cannot produce PMS, despite turnaround maintenance money of $898 million. So if you're comparing Dangote that built a brand new refinery with all the CDU and CRU and FCC in place with LMA, Dangote has been exporting products to Europe, is exporting products to Southeast Asia. What's the equivalence exactly? The crude oil feedstock for Dangote, you can see the ships bring it into its tanks through single point mooring. The trunk line that is supposed to take crude oil to LMA is out of service. How are they getting crude oil? Are they barging it? Or are they taking trucks to send crude oil feedstock to LMA? The 46-kilometer trunk line that's supposed to take crude oil from Escravos down to Warri Refinery is out of service because it was vandalized. How are you taking crude oil feedstock there? LMA loading bay of 83 trucks has not been functioning for weeks. So what exactly are we talking about? I want to know the justification of what you're saying, that you're trying to compare Warri and LMA to Dangote because when Dangote
No, I asked you a very specific question to define refining because of the way you've been using blending. But let me ask my next short question so other people can answer.
No.
I think I get you. I understand you now. I understand you. I understand you. Let me ask my next question. So you spoke about on-air port, right? Is on-air port a specialized...
Multiple questions.
I already asked Rudolph for permission, and I spoke with Rudolph outside, so chill out. So on-air port, is on-air port a specialized port just for oil and gas, or does it handle general cargo?
On-air port is designated as oil and gas.
It does handle general cargo. In 2021, it was upgraded with a multi-purpose terminal to handle general cargo. So on-air is allowed to bring in... let me land my question.
What is the port? I'm asking you a question back. What is the port categorization?
Allow me to ask you a question before you use question for questions. We do that a lot, please. So on-air port handles general cargo. So my question is, why will you say there's no port in the southern part of Nigeria when on-air port handles both oil and gas and generalized container? And if you go to Maersk, website, you're not even letting me have an agenda. You're not letting me answer my question. Ask your question.
Excuse me, please. Excuse me.
Can you let me just ask the questions first? Then you answer me.
No, I will stop you right in your tracks. You have an agenda. There was nowhere where I said on-air ports. The southern part does not have port operations. There was nowhere I said that. I said the only functional seaport in Nigeria that accepts general cargoes is Lagos. That's what I said. And I said, Warri has an issue with channel draft. Calabar has an issue with channel draft. Akwa Ibom big seaport, nobody's talking about it. There was nowhere where I said that the southern part, the Eastern Maritime Corridor, does not have a functional seaport or does not have a seaport at all. It clearly has an agenda.
All right. Thank you, Kelvin. Let's go to Okija.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Kelvin. Thank you for joining us. I follow you like a lot of people here, and actually, I sent a video to Rudolph, asking to invite you. Anyway, but I mean, this question is going to be, I don't know, some people they will not like it, but I don't really care. Why is it that NNPC, I mean Nigerian crude oil, is gotten from mostly from south and some southeast, states, and then the offshore. Then you go to NNPC, you have board of directors, mostly Fulani people, and it's since these Fulani people came during Buhari that NNPC started becoming something else. I mean, NNPC was bad, but it become, the dimension, it's taking, I mean, unimaginable. And some of us, like people will know this list going on in NNPC. For instance, I know someone, a 25-year-old, she has a house in Abuja because one of the directors of NNPC has estate in Abuja.
No, excuse me.
When we have,
we're not going to make those kind of. We're not going to make those kind of statements. Please. Those statements are pointed. They are directed at specific persons. We're not going to make those kind of statements. Okay. Let's stay on facts. Let's be objective. Any question you're asking should have like substance. Please. I'm not going to join in accusing any individual. Please.
All right. So, Okija, do you want to join your question?
Okay, I have my facts. Okay, we can discuss that later. But anyway, okay. Can you talk about because the tax bill? Okay. I don't know. I've tried to, but I've not spent a lot of time to understand the tax bill. The old one and the new one. But I think someone was saying that in the old one or the new one, I'm not sure. So that's why I wanted to clarify that. For instance, since MTN is in Lagos, okay, it does headquarters in Lagos. If you make a call in say Sokoto, that the VAT generated, for your call goes to MTN in Lagos. That it doesn't like it because the VAT supposed to be used there by usage. If you use it in Sokoto, if you use something in Sokoto and pay VAT on it, it's supposed to be attributed to Sokoto, not to the headquarters in Lagos. Can you please clarify?
That's input and output. And for you to actually have that work, you need to fiscalize the the work is for the Nigerian Revenue Service to do this fiscalization, and that's going to take a lot of infrastructure. So basically what you've said is input and output VATs for derivation. But the problem is the fiscalization of the supply chain, of the value chain.
All right. Thank you, Okija. Let's go to Jefferson. I think you're the last person.
Sorry, Rudolph, sorry, I'm not clear. Is it input or output? Where is it? Because I'm not clear. Who is getting the money? Is it MTN?
For you to capture input and output, you have to fiscalize the entire value chain. The infrastructure for that fiscalization is the problem. So for you to be able to capture it, like this person produced, this person consumed, this is where it happened.
Your line is echoing. That's why we have to mute you. Once you turn it on, we can hear what the guest is saying. So
for you to capture where production was done, where consumption was done, input and output, you have to fiscalize the value chain to be able to do attribution for it. So the infrastructure for that fiscalization is what will take time to achieve.
So will it be fixed in the new tax bill? Is it fixed or, is it taken care of?
Yes, I believe that's what the service is working. They are developing capacity for fiscalization and also to be able to capture attribution for it, for input and output VAT.
Sorry, I think what Okija is trying to find out is, with this new tax bill, I make a call in Kaduna, MTN, on MTN line. MTN headquarters is in Lagos. With this new tax bill, who gets the tax? I think that's what he's trying to figure out, based on this new proposal. Who's going to get the tax? Is it Kaduna, where I made the call, or MTN headquarters in Lagos?
VAT is a consumption tax. VAT is a consumption tax. As a matter of fact, there are deliberations on import VAT to the extent where, so for example, manufacturer in Kano imports maybe wheat to mill into flour. The question is, where is it attributed to? Is it attributed to Kano? Is it attributed to as FG VAT? Because it's import VAT. Import VAT is FG VAT. Okay? So there's a question of attribution. Yeah. Now, VAT, for you to understand VAT, you have to, of course, know that VAT is a consumption tax, not a production tax. But then if you want to really talk about fairness and equity in derivation, you have to look at input and output to be able to fairly calculate attribution. I don't know if you get what I mean.
Okay.
So for you to design a structure where you can fairly say consumption was done for phone calls in this place and this place, you have to develop fiscalization to capture it. How do you capture it? That's the problem. How do you capture that for attribution? Do you understand my point?
Okay. All right. Thank you. Jefferson, welcome.
Yeah, Rudolph, thanks for welcoming me. Can you all hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thanks for welcoming me. And Kelvin, I see a renowned economist. It's good to add all the figures and all to give us a better view of where we are heading as a country. I would like to first of all say that what the other caller was trying to ask you concerning the refinery wasn't really necessary, because, I mean, if most of us did our basic chemistry, we know that refining, once you break down crude oil through a fractionated column, you're going to have all the products you want. The process and how you achieve it is different. So I felt that question wasn't necessary, but that's a story for another day. So I want to appreciate your views and how you're actually explaining the economic policies and all. But I just want to ask, because, you know, one thing I know about this country, Nigeria, is that we are very, very quick at, first of all, increasing price of commodities, increasing price of all things like, rates and all that, you know. It's very, very quick. We are good at that. We are good at adding cost. In fact, one thing I've noticed in this country, that once you add a cost to anything, be it fuel, petrol, or whatever it is, on the national level, the businessmen or other business people and all other stakeholders will replicate it real quick without asking questions. We are good at that. But when it comes to getting value, it is a struggle. You know, for instance, look at in the communication industry, for instance, there's nothing that is stopping them from excelling. But sometimes when you even subscribe to their services, they will not even get the best out of it. You know. So my question, let me make it simple. I want to make it very simple for for everyone here. All these tax, even if this tax is fully implemented now, how will it be followed in such a way we'll get the best of governance? Because over the years, even from independence up till now, when they just say, oh, they are collecting tax, we don't see what the money is being used for. We don't really see it. In other parts of the world, in Texas, in UK, in any parts of the world, once you see taxpayers' money, you know where it is being spent. Sometimes when they are doing a project, they will even put it on they'll put it on the signage and say, oh, 2.8 million USD taxpayers' money working for you. Can the same be attributed in this our nation? Is it going to see the light of day, knowing fully well that our political leaders are very fond of flamboyant expenses? Right, because I'm rounding up. Because even in America, where things are working, they still have loopholes which they are still currently looking into in terms of expenditure. But at least they have a sense of direction. I'm really concerned about where we are going as a nation. So my question to you, what's going to be the aftermath of implementation of all these taxations and all that? Where we will go with it?
Well, I can tell you for free that in Nigeria, the tax to GDP ratio is going to increase significantly. The budget deficits will reduce. The need for the government to borrow for 2025 is projecting is going to raise about 13 trillion naira to finance budget deficits, and is going to pay about 15.8 trillion naira in debt servicing costs. Debt servicing naira costs. So if you have your tax to GDP ratio go up, the need to borrow money to finance deficits in the budget and also to be able to explore windows like ways and means, like we discussed earlier, is going to reduce. So that's good for the economy, because it was the basis, it was on that basis that all of the, like I explained, ways and means started, and all the CRR, public-private sector, quantitative easing, and that contributed to devaluation. We've seen a lack of liquidity in the banking system to actually borrow the private sector, even if the NPR has contributed to that. We have today, and that has stifled production, real industrial production. Because inflation is both demand push and cost push. Demand pull and cost push. So if you don't create enough goods to meet up with the demand, then there's too much cash in the system chasing so few goods, and at least increases prices. It's basic demand and supply economics. So the fact that you take so much cash from the system, CRR and the banking system does not have enough to lend to the private sector, even if, like I said, NPR has contributed to that, has also impacted on the ability of the private sector to produce, to meet up with demand, and then be able to meet cash supply at equilibrium. The cash supply today, money supply is about 108 trillion naira. It's never been this high. So the tax bills will help Nigeria if it passes, which I'm expecting it to pass, to the extent where the tax to GDP ratio of Nigeria will improve significantly. Nigeria is one of the lowest in the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa. So it's good. I'll tell you, it's good.
All right. Thank you, Jefferson. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Kevin, one last question from me, and then you give us your final thoughts. Unless, Jim, I don't know if you have. Oh, I see someone down there.
I wanted to ask for, because I'm not a tax person, I listened to the explanation he gave on how the VAT allocation or income is shared. I wasn't very clear, but because I tend to agree with, I think it was Show, that question Show was trying to ask, and I'm still very unclear. So I make a call. A call is a consumption, right? If I'm correct. I make a phone call, that's a consumption activity. So if I make that call in Kaduna, but like Show rightly said, the head office of the company that is offering that service is way in Lagos. Where is that tax being allocated to at the end of the day? Will it be to Kaduna or to Lagos? I'm a layman, so that's what I'm trying to understand.
Derivation means that you calculate the attribution based on consumption, because VAT is a consumption tax. Okay. Now I'm telling you that the implementation of that input and output model will require that you fiscalize the entire value chain for you to be able to properly calculate for attribution. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get you. So in other words, right now, we actually even have a problem. We haven't sorted something out before we get
to I'm not saying it hasn't been sorted. The Federal Revenue Service is working actively. They're also increasing their personnel pool, to be able to accommodate for changes for the bills passing into law, and the human capacity demand, technology demand. Federal Revenue Service has been working since last year, they're going to deploy new technology. They're doing trainings, so they're working very hard. What I'm saying to you is that is the gap that the FRS, which will become the NRS, will have to close up. The fiscalization for attribution. That's what I'm saying to you.
All right, Jim, thank you so much. So Kevin, my last question, diaspora remittances. All these people you are seeing here, they all live abroad. They all send money home. And they've been threatening that they will withdraw their money. They will stop sending money home. Should that happen, what will that be? What would that do to the economy? I know it's impractical in a way because they have to take care of. But there's a campaign that people should maybe 1 month stop sending money so that the Nigerian government will feel the impact. What will happen if that should come to reality? And also, how do they capture the money sent? So if someone is going home and you give the person $1 in the pocket and they go home and change it on the street, and if somebody is sending it through the transfer systems, which one is how is the government capturing all of them? How is that done?
Well, I'll tell you, for example, the records show that diaspora remittance is actually more than 20 billion, but what the government is getting is anywhere around $45 billion. And a lot of that value is lost because of the new peer-to-peer system that you have. Okay. What the Nigerian government's headache is figuring out how to bridge that gap to ensure that the peer-to-peer system does not disrupt the flow of the actual dollars into the economy. Yeah, because what you have basically is a peer-to-peer system where people that have created technology frameworks for ensuring that peer-to-peer system basically cashing on the arbitrage, and they make a lot of profits. So they are the ones reaping the real benefits. So what the Nigerian government has to figure out, the headache they have, is figuring out how to compete with the people who have developed a model that enable that peer-to-peer system and arbitrage to work. That's what the government's work is. But to be honest with you, I don't think stopping remittances to Nigeria is the best. And the reason is because no matter how far we go, home is always home. And we always have people who are connected to us somehow. You can't take your whole family abroad. Your extended family, you can't take them. Your cousin calls you that, oh, the dad has a health condition, they need $200. And out of the goodness of your hearts, you send the money. You can't stop doing these things. Or they don't have food to eat and you send them money. You can't stop doing these things. So at the end of the day, we have to realize that home is home. And, I'm privileged to travel a little bit. And I'll tell you, I'm not like other people. Wherever I go to around the world, I always want to come back. Despite the fact that you see me raging sometimes on TV and you see me on newspaper columns write about Nigerian economy and talk so passionately about the economy, I love Nigeria. It's the reason why I've not left. I don't have anything against anyone that has left, because I think, with the way Nigeria is, some people are just better abroad. Okay, they are better abroad. They do better economically. They just succeed and excel in a system that works. But I love it here. And that's why I'm here. So I wouldn't advise that anyone should stop the flow of monies back home. And the monies you're sending, by the way, for me, I think I'll tell you what. Nigeria presents a good opportunity to invest, and I'll tell you why I said this. See, the currency is at a very low point. It's very weak. I don't expect that Naira is going to appreciate to 1,000 or 900 within the next 12 months. I don't. Except crude oil production dramatically increases, which it will not, because you can't increase production by just wishing or waving a magic wand. You can't. You have to put infrastructure in place, and there are so many things that has to go together with it. But Naira is cheap. Naira is cheap. There are significant gaps in the real sector. There are significant gaps in the service sector that you can fill. Set up a business, have people you trust, or develop systems for them to run, have stream of income back home. So there are opportunities to invest in Nigeria, and especially in the real sector with B2B, business to business. I know it's very difficult to operate in Nigeria. Nigeria is a difficult place to do business. But as soon as you develop a system and you crack it, you're able to go like that consistently. So I wouldn't advise you to stop remitting monies back home to family or to whatever investment vehicle you want to set up here. I wouldn't advise you to do that, despite the fact that we have structural problems in the economy. There's still a lot of opportunity for you to invest in Nigeria.
All right. Before your final thoughts, I led in Revolution. All the people that you've spoken to, they are normal people. They don't want to burn down the country. But The revolution has a different viewpoint. So let me just indulge me. Let him ask you a question or comment, and then you can round up. So, go ahead, revolution.
Yeah, good evening, doctor, and brother Kevin. Good evening to you. In fact, I'm at work, as you can see, and I've been listening all along because I like those of you who are very educated, who speak with the language of economics, and I'm not so educated guy, but nobody can fool me anyway. So what I'm trying to ask you, with all what you've told us, I saw some guys come in and try to pull your legs. You fought them off, or you try to stand your ground. Fine, but for me, as a person, you painted Nigeria to be good and bad. That's why I came in. You are somebody who is very straight. You painted it when it's bad, it was bad. When it's good, you said it. When there is hope, you said it. But for people like me, like Doctor said, I've not given up on Nigeria. I love Nigeria so much. But sometimes I feel we are not. We have the solution. We have all the problems, but none of you always give us that solution that we require. Wrong people in the wrong places, for example. All your ideas, if good people are in the good places, will work. Are you not thinking there should be something more hard? Something like Peter B said recently, he's ready to die. Now he woke up that he's ready if that would be the end. Now he woke up. We've been crying for this, but thank God he woke up. What is your own? What is your own now? I want you to know. Thank you.
Yeah, a very interesting question and comment at the same time. I'll tell you that I don't, Rudolph, I don't want to get into politics, okay? I don't want to stand.
They didn't know. They didn't get that memo.
I'm trying to avoid having to talk about political parties, but I'll tell you that Nigerians need to take the Electoral Act seriously. The Electoral Act doesn't get the scrutiny that it deserves. We need to take the Electoral Act seriously. The system for primary elections, which is within party before it gets out to inter-party, is a problem.
All right. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Any final thoughts? 2024 was an interesting year. I feel like Nigeria is, taking a bend, and I'll tell you, the midstream sector that is just beginning to develop, because before now you had laws in the PIA, but you didn't have the laws they've not been put to test. As a matter of fact, the regulator NNPC, they don't even have a lab where they test products like specified in the Petroleum Industry Act. They don't have a lab. They don't. Now, industry stakeholders are challenging the regulator and saying, this is the law that you jointly created. Why are you not living by it? So you have a midstream sector forming. The amount of imported petroleum products that about 40% of that was substandard, is beginning to reduce. The part of domestic crude oil supply obligations that requires that the operators fulfill the requirement of the active refineries in Nigeria before they get licensed to export. That part of the law is being tested. I predict that in the next 2 to 4 years, Nigeria is going to revise its membership of OPEC, because the strategy will change from, do we want to commit our OPEC quota to buyers under that declaration of cooperation, or do we want to change our strategy to, we want to be net exporters of refined products and focus on our feedstock, first on domestic refineries, and then leverage the effects you get from exporting those products, which will be more than the raw crude oil feedstock. So I think a midstream sector for the petroleum industry is developing. Okay, And you're going to have a more stable and robust downstream sector in the next 5 years. I predict that Nigeria is going to become a net exporter of petroleum derivatives within the next 5 years. Crude oil production will go up, but it will take at least 5 to 7 years for it to go back to 2014 level of about 2.1, 2.2 million, 2.3 million barrels per day. It will take 5 to 7 years at the minimum of consistent reforms and deliberate implementation. I think that the worst is not over, but like I said, Nigeria is coming out of a bend. I don't expect it to get worse than this. I don't think it's going to get worse than this. Okay. However, I will encourage that all of us in our own little spheres of influence, we push for decentralization of the economy away from the Western maritime flank. Excessive focus, and focus on gas transmission pipes, standard gauge rail lines for logistics for distribution, focus on seaports in other places apart from Lagos, and open up the economy, power lines, power transmission lines, fundamental structural reforms that goes from exclusive to concurrent to residual legislative list and its implementation across the board. Okay, this is how you can leverage on incremental progress to leapfrog the economy. All hope is not lost. I don't think all hope is lost. Even if I believe that with better leadership, you can actually achieve exponential growth. Nigeria, with deliberate reforms and pressure on the government, will yield and will keep chipping away at small reforms that you see bring out incremental growth. Well, I don't expect that you're going to see that exponential, change. It's going to be incremental, so yeah.
Thank you so much, Kelvin, for joining us today. Hopefully, in no distant time, we will invite you again and have a wonderful interaction with you. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a break and then we'll come back and do a review and a little bit of our normal show. Thank you, everybody.
Onye ọma zoro obi o, akwa nwa zoro obi o, Max ịbịa bunyegokwanụ m n'ofu ube n'azụ ụlaga n'ịbịazigo, mmanwụ ụlaga do n'ịbịazigo, akwa nwa nwe ilochi o, biko rapụ zoro ka ọ nabazi ya. Onye ọma zoro biko, abọmma watara ndasari, ịbịa wunye n'ịgwana m ụlagado n'ịbịazigo, mma ụlagado n'ịbịazigo, abọmma nwe ilochila, biko rapụ zoro ọ na-abazi ya. Mazi wekowa odogu na kwere zineka, onye ọma n'igadele m, mazi n'ịbịazigo, ibugo with melody. ezi nwanne m na ị ga-adịle mma ụlagado n'ibezigo mma ụlagado n'ibezigo amammanwụ ilochilo biko rapụ ụzọ anabazi tee onye ọma zoro amammanwụ azoro sorry ibia nwunye nukwana m ofu ube narụ
All right. Thank you, everybody, and welcome back to the show. And it was an interesting one. I really want to thank all the people that joined us. I know we are cutting into the time for the next stream, which we deal with our typical have your say for Saturday. And Forefathers will be your host. But before we do that, let me just get a quick review of what happened. Let me start with you. Show.
Yes, thank you, Rudolph, and thank you for bringing Kelvin. I guess there's not much to add. Kelvin does what he does, his ideas. I've watched a lot of his videos, so there were no surprises for me. And it's quite interesting to see him, take some tough questions. It would have been nice to see that play out, maybe slightly in a slightly different way, to get proper answers from both ends, and people can go home and make their minds up on who is presenting the superior argument, because at the end of the day, such discussions would only help Nigeria, as a society. So I'm not opposed to having such debates here and there, but good to have him here. He's quite hopeful, and he spoke well about Nigeria. So you can't say he hates Nigeria as an entity. He spoke well about Nigeria. He said it's not like he can't afford to leave. And I know some people will say he makes money being in Nigeria. If he is a go runner, you to pack your bag, go and make money there. So the fact that he lives there, he's still hopeful that in 5 years we'll be exporting this and that. I'm hopeful too. It's just that my hope and faith in Nigeria is very slim at this point. It's just the way Nigeria has dealt with some of us. So I want to be hopeful, but because if you think about it, sorry, just to go back quickly, they told us for 8 years that Buhari was laying some crazy foundations. You would think it's Julius Berger. Once Buhari is done, you'll be grateful. Your great-grandchildren will thank Buhari. Tinubu came, and now they are saying they made empty treasury. And you can't separate Tinubu from Buhari, because Tinubu, the current president, bragged, and rightly so, that if it wasn't for me, there would be no Buhari. He lost 3 times. I made him president. Is that because you're a poor judge of character, or you just selfishly did the deal, knowing that if I scratch his back and he becomes president, he would give me the vote of the North? I don't know which one happened. I'm just saying that this one that they're saying Tinubu is doing well, I hope he does well. I've said it before. I will never wish any president evil so that I can say, no, I'm not built like that. I want him to succeed. But it's just the PTSD, if I can use that, of them telling us for 8 years that Buhari was laying some crazy foundations. You would think Tinubu will come in and it will be a lot easier for him, because the person that was laying foundation had just finished. And by now we should be getting to lane 2. But now we are starting to lay another foundation. 8 years should not pass. After 8 years, don't come and tell us again that the next APC person that you put is laying another foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sho. Yeah, thank you so much. And let's hear from Chim before I go to Forefathers.
Okay, thank you, Rudolph. I think, very cerebral guest you brought. I stumbled on him a while ago, and like I said, I was watching him last night. I'm not sure what time of the day they had that conversation, but it was yesterday, considering the fact that Nigeria is ahead of the city where I am. And it was also a very interesting conversation he had. I'm not knowledgeable in the oil and gas sector, and I was honest about it. I'm never going to show up here to interrogate anybody on a subject matter I am shallow or unintelligent to discuss. But on the simple matter of the issue of the seaport administration he brought up, it was something of interest to me. And contrary to what certain people always, put up, that somebody is jealous of Lagos and all those things, very baseless conversations I sometimes see people make up. It's in the best interest of Nigeria that we'll harness every resource the country has and every potential that the country can muster and benefit from. Whether that potential is at the tip of Nigeria and Niger, or at the one between Nigeria and Chad, wherever that potential is, let's maximize it. That's what I'm for. And he rightly spoke about it. I do not see why we should continue to put all our eggs in a seaport in Lagos when we have seaport potentials elsewhere in the country that will benefit us, including some of the things he brought up that I never knew, like how having a corridor for what did he call it? What's this word that they use in the oil and gas sector that sometimes we used to think is a negative word? Ships coming from other places docking and Nigerian government generating income from it and all that. We have all these things, but because we're not developing those potentials, sometimes out of ethnic bias, let's call it a spade, because there's this fear that if you decentralize port operations and have other ones in Calabar or Port Harcourt or wherever it is, then Lagos will die. No, Lagos will not. The seaports elsewhere in the US, none of them is making New York not to advance. There are other seaports elsewhere. Same ditto in Canada where I live. It's not only Toronto that has a seaport. There's a seaport in Vancouver, which is in the far west of the country. And if you look, in fact, as I was talking, like I said, I immediately went on Google and Googled the European map to look at a few things, and I discovered that Germany is blessed, one of the blessed countries in Europe with seaport. It has at its northern edge, it has Hamburg, and at the southern edge, it has another seaport. In fact, multiple seaports. And I don't see why we should just keep doing what we're doing. But in all, I think it was a fantastic conversation we had. The only thing I'm just going to say is, and like I keep saying, let's lay the standards on how people will come to the show, standards on how people, let it be fair, because the moment we begin to give people benefits of the doubt here and there, we're going to start creating problems. I just want to put that out there. Other than that, I had a fantastic day listening to him and learning from him, and also asking him questions and listening to him respond to some of the questions that people asked him.
All right, thank you. Forefathers.
I appear to have missed most of it, but I'm sure he will still, repeat most of the stuff he often said on his normal appearance on TV. But before that, anyway, thank you for having me, and greetings to everyone on the panel, the chat, and to the viewers. Yeah, from what I gather, most of his opinions and views seem to align with mine. Probably why I didn't even feel like I needed to ask him any questions. And from what everything he said, apart from the seaport, I didn't know much about the seaport issues, other than felt that Nigeria should have developed the seaports in the other regions a lot more, because it would have offered Nigeria actually more, because River Niger cuts through the south or to the ocean. So you could have seen it whereby we carried out a project to have a corridor into the nation with through the waterways, all the way to Adambra, and I think almost to Middle Belt and Central, this in North Central. But the Nigerian state, for some reason, the politics and instability plays a role in the way things shape up. So it's not only the potential that is also necessary. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was talking about this, and I was pointing fingers at people like Simon Ekpa, Asare Dokubo, all those people that are causing trouble in that region. because they prevented, you know, the development of that area. Because while the area is like that, nobody's going to come and want to build, you know, at least expand the operations of a seaport. So I share most of his views. So I didn't have much to ask him really, because I've watched him on TV several times. But as always, if I had met him here, I would have just asked him which of the government's policy was the most damaging one to the Nigerian economy, and the floating of the currency cost Nigeria more than the amount it costs to defend the naira. And that would have been interesting to watch him answer. But regarding what Sho said about Buhari laying a foundation, if you ask me, I would have thought Buhari did lay a solid foundation for this president. And he laid a foundation whereby he's able to take out the fuel subsidies, which gives him financial wiggle room. And then the Dangote refinery and other refineries coming on stream will also reduce the pressure on the naira. So all that, what did he do with it in the first 1 year and a half? He basically completely torpedoed the entire thing. And that is one of my biggest gripes with this government, that I don't understand why they did what they did. And it just appears that they did it to keep Nigeria standing still. Right now, Nigerians their purchasing power has reduced from when the government came into office based on these policies that they've done, because the petrol price has gone up more than 3-4 times. The currency has depreciated almost twice over, but the salaries haven't increased in accordance. So you can see people are poorer for it, for everything he's done. But it didn't need to be that way. He's basically sabotaged the benefit that we would have gotten from Dangote and the Port Harcourt refineries coming on stream. But that's my observation. But, you know, I'm sure you have your own views on that. So that's it. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
All right, we have about 3 minutes before the next stream that Forefathers will lead you guys. James, I will come to you, but let me just point out, Forefathers, I was thinking that if you had come on, you will ask a question about security, especially with the ports structure we have now. You know, a country that is serious country will think about, what if something happens to Lagos? What if another country will attack Nigeria and attack Lagos ports? If we don't have any other one that is developed and we could use, that would be a problem, you know. So anyway, but that's why everybody's important in this conversation. You know, there may be a question that only you might be interested in that is also very important. Mr. James, welcome.
Yeah, I think he succeeded in painting a very bleak picture, which some of us are not seeing. While he was answering questions on ways and means, he was alluding to the monumental corruption in the central bank system, in fact, the banking sector of the country. A situation whereby people just go there and loot the country blind. And we are still hoping that tomorrow will be better. I think we are just building castles in the air. And there's something he probably, maybe time did not permit him to delve into the issue of crude oil theft. The monumental theft of crude oil, the main resource of the country, is going on unchecked, and nobody is saying anything about it. Yet we are hoping against hope that tomorrow will be better than today. I think we are building castles in the air. The country is beyond repair. Let us just call a spade a spade. I'm not saying that, I'm not happy that Nigeria is collapsing. I've benefited tremendously from the Republic of Nigeria through Obafemi Awolowo, as I always mention on this program. But the truth is, the country as we are talking right now is beyond redemption.
Thank you, Mr. James. We have two more minutes. So let me see quickly how we can get this done. Ovie talks too much, so let's go to Okija. Okija.
No, I'm making sure. I'm making sure. The good one. I didn't. Am I going? I'm not away from.
Yeah, go ahead, Ovie. Go ahead.
Yeah. So energy. 2 questions. What it make me no go into energy with him? To me, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. He's good at what he does. Let me put that out there. He's good at what he does. And because of that, people get mesmerized when they put all these technical terms and all those garbage as far as I'm concerned. I said that to say because you asked him 2 questions that make me just say, okay, I just write them up immediately. When it comes to the issue of politics, you say, "Ah, no, no, it's staying away." That to me says everything. In Nigeria, even my one fuck for Sokoto, that policy is predicated on oil. So there's no policy or politics in Nigeria. Start with oil and finish with oil. But I understand why he's saying no go there. So when you ask him about the ratio, how Nigeria they pay the foreign nationals, he says something that Nigeria they will take crude, then they will give out Nigeria the fine. And himself, he mentioned it that in fact it's just about 30-something% of it. So the question every Nigerian should be concerned about is that what is the agreement within the foreign nationals and us Nigerians? So if anybody won't talk about oil cannot answer that question, and rubbish he or she the person they talk. And I'm not saying that because they book. I'm from Niger Delta. There's 99% chance that I get blood for that oil company that can start that last for 30 years. So I'm also a part and parcel of the policies of the oil, not because it's not just book. So that guy is the CEO of Dairy Hills. He denied it because he knows where I'm going with it. So somebody that was in finance for 10 years and left to join agro business. Why? Agro business, and if you go to all the companies we partner with Dairy Hills, you'll be shocked. He began to go China, go Europe. About 3 of the companies that partner with the company are from Europe, are from Germany, they are petrochemical companies. So when people know what that's all countries, the question was is about economy. So can you separate agri from the petroleum that we are talking about? Now I'm responding to those on commission where they don't say, oh, wait till you ask. No, you don't understand. Just leave it there. The guy answered my question. He know why I asked that question, and he know where I was going with it. But he denied that he's the CEO of Dairy Queen. What does they get? Make a come and tell us they in the lie. So there are more to this thing than make somebody come on here, they mesmerize us with English and terms. That's not easy thing to do. That's not easy thing to do. It's an expert. That's what he's supposed to do. There's a reason he's always on TV. Ask your question, especially Arise TV. How many people that have far contrary opinion to their own that they give airtime all the time? That's a question everybody should go think about. That's not to say airtime or anything. No. Some of us know, most of the things in a book, as well as some common sense. If we don't know the agreement between us and our partners, then where do we go from there?
All right.
So every technical terms and others are just bunk on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We can continue the conversation at the other end with forefathers. You are a great guy. Why is it that we're getting echo when you turn on your phone?
Who? Me?
You? Yes.
I don't have anything open now. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why. Anyway.
It's difficult to listen to, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm gonna change after this. I'm gonna change my system. I'm using my phone. Anyway, yeah, there are so many questions I wanted to ask him, better short time. We talked about, I wanted to ask him about the oil activities going on, oil and gas activity going on in the most interior state like Anambra, Abia, Imo, and also the issue between Anambra and Delta, because there's oil field that was in question, there was a dispute. A company that was supposed to be operating in Delta, they crashed into Anambra. And also I wanted to ask him about solid mineral in the north, and the issues surrounding that, and also you talked about the blue economy, but talked about 5 companies operating in Nigerian fishery. I don't know, because the last time I knew, they were foreign companies. I don't know if they are any Nigerian company operating. I remember one country, a small country in Africa. I can't remember. It's been a couple of years ago. I read the story. They considered their offshore to one, the place they own, to one company, and the company paid them, Chinese company, they paid them $250-something million, for some years. So they generated revenue from that, because there was a time I went to Nigeria and I went to the Papa, and to my shock, I saw some, a lot of, foreign people, Filipinos, Chinese people who are fishing the Nigerian water, from Papa there. So they have so many, so much vessel over. I saw like over 30 vessels there. Foreign companies, Chinese, Filipinos. I was shocked, and I was like, why does Nigeria know that this is going on? So I wanted to ask him, but yeah, maybe next time you come, we'll have opportunity here.
All right, thank you. Let me just for someone that just made me remember. If for any reason a guest is coming and you have a lot of questions, you can actually send some of them to me. Maybe I'll because we don't. By the time we get to you, may not have opportunity to ask all the questions. I would have liked to get his answer on the Anambra thing you were talking about the oil field there and what's going on there. All right, finally, Janaba.
Rudy, nice to be here with you. I watch you guys from the beginning to the end. I don't feel any reason to come in and ask any questions. Basically, this is a brilliant young man, and I was just enjoying the conversation and the up and down sometimes with the panelists on their own questions and how he answered them. So it's quite interesting, and enjoying every bit of it. And it's a brilliant mind. So that's all.
All right. Thank you, Janaba. And on that note, I want to thank everybody that joined us on this stream. I want to thank those that supported us, the Black Beauty, Judge, Alexander Gomez, and yeah, thank you all. And we switch over to the next stream, which is the traditional Javier Say 247, where we're going to talk about issues in the news, and the forefathers will lead us during that stream. Thank you again for joining us, and hopefully
we also have another stream by 4 p.m. Please don't forget that.
4 p.m. What stream?
There's another stream by 4 p.m.
Women's section.
4 p.m. Talking New York time. I don't understand any other time. 4 p.m. It's almost 4 p.m. here. I was confused. All right. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be joining.
Please like, share, subscribe.
Oh, yes,
it's a new
yes.
channel. We're trying to grow this one.
Thank you. Sure, you should do this now. Thank you very much. So please, we moved, so you can see the numbers. It showed that a lot of people are yet to come with us, but we moved. We have to stay here. So please, like, subscribe, so that you and put this notification so you get informed when we go live, so that you don't miss these chances to get involved in the conversation. Again, thank you, everybody, and see you at the next stream.